Day 5.
One more lesson,
said Bettina, brushing her teeth while gritting them, all 6 pairs.
That's all we've got to get through. Then we'll be away from Orpheus, forever, hopefully.
She had a faraway look in all 6 eyes.
To think that I'll just be with people I care about, and maybe they will care for me too.
She realised what she was saying and blushed. I don't think I can do it, cried Robin, hyperventilating. I can't take another lesson with that psycho Maggrumph.
Come hide under the table with me,
said Jake in the corridor.
It's cozy and safe. Quaking visitors are always welcome.
Thank you, said Robin. I think I will. Is there room? She attempted to squeeze under Jake's table, but hard as she tried, she was left with either her head sticking out or her bottom. Well, continued Robin after trying to wriggle herself free without success, at least if I get stuck, I have a legitimate excuse for not being in class, don't I?
Poor Penguin,
said Archelaus.
I do believe you're suffering from PTSD, pseudo-space traumatization cellular identity. It happens when you be on an alien world for too long. Your nerves start to give way.
I feel for you, Penguin,
said Bettina.
But it's just one more day. She can't do anything to us. You've already stood up to us so bravely. We'll be free soon. You wait and see.
Yes, said Lando. She can't break us now. We're too strong and unified. All right, said Robin, starting to calm down. It's just a few hours, right? I mean, it can't be as bad as yesterday.
No,
muttered Hermione, rolling her eyeballs.
To be fair, it's probably worse.
You can do it, Robin, said Lando. I believe in you. Thank you, said Robin, trying to pull herself back from under the table. I hate to say this, but I think I am legitimately stuck.
Oh dear,
said XXXX, and he disappeared into the kitchen, coming back with a slab of butter, which he began to spread all over Jake's table.
Oh no,
screamed Glabdiharbit.
I can't believe it's food replicated butter. I have a phobia of being butter to death.
That's alright,
said XXXX.
I'll get some ice cream.
Too cold.
Shivered Jake.
Cold is scary.
Salad cream, then.
I'm allergic to sour cream. It's got lumps in it.
Ketchup.
Offered XXXX.
Scary.
said Jake.
Too many tomatoes.
Tomatoes are scary.
XXXX was surprised.
Yes, they're so big and red and tomatoey.
Alright,
Continued XXXX.
soup then.
Jake shook his head.
Croutons, extra especially scary. They lurk in the bowl, thinking you can't see them, but really they're out to get you when you're not looking.
Fizzy drinks.
Too much fizz.
Gravy.
Too many granules.
Baby oil.
Too many babies.
A million Mekkion megaton microwaves. Come here or we'll be waiting for the rest of term.
said Bettina with a sigh, pulling hard until Robin shot out from under the table, bottom first, right onto Squash, who landed in a waste paper basket.
Are you alright now, Penguin?
Bettina asked, as Robin dusted herself down. I think so, she said. Thank you.
Remember, just one more lesson, then freedom.
The school bell went just then. We walked into the classroom and were surprised to see how differently it looked, filled with flashing signs and whirling lights. Jake immediately jumped under his desk and hid. Mrs. Maggrumph was stood at the front wearing a holographic hat. Bettina went straight up to her and thrust a pile of papers under her nose, with my handwriting on them from the night before.
Before we start,
Belobrat said,
I found these papers on the floor in the hall. I think the caretaker must have dropped them. We do want to be fair now, don't we? I think the house points related to that trip. They all belong to that Maggrumph.
As she sat down, winking at Margalo. Mrs. Maggrumph looked through them and smiled.
Very good,
she said.
More house points for Maggrumph now. Give Margalo a positive integer, so now she won't be disintegrate, and a positive number, so here she won't be lumbered. You're coming on the trip, old man. Be ready, fearless. I'm ready to go.
Margalo grinned at all of us and bowed thank you to Bettina. However, the Belobrat took things too far. As usual, leaning back in a chair, she spoke up again to the teacher.
I'm surprised you don't have the need to keep one of us back for the red weed.
2 of the heads turned on the one who said it, and one of her sidearms slapped her middle head.
Wait, forget I just said that. What do you know about the redweed?
Asked Mrs. Maggrumph threateningly, her antlers knotting with tension.
I'm ready to tell me. We've speed. Nothing,
stuttered Bettina, trying to think. We met the Belobrat trying to sell it, said Robin quickly. He mentioned something about bringing in bottles and thought you might have needed somebody to shift it for you. But of course you're so big and strong, you can do it all yourself, unaided. Mrs. Maggrumph looked relieved, and her antlers unknotted.
Well,
she said slowly,
I see our little secret's out the bag, and actually, I'm rather glad. Orpheus is a new sponsor to help you with all your physical bits that have gone sore. It's a chance to make more cash on the side, so we've handed over all our pride, and in return we've got the adverts with jingles. Be sure to take the time to mingle while you work out where to spend your pocket money. I particularly like the red weed colours. But we don't get pocket money,
said Bettina.
A drain on the state, you call it, and we said, what's a state? And Hermione said, what a state indeed, and we all laughed, but we didn't get any money, we just got detention.
But she was just into silence. Instead, Mrs. Maggrumph directed us round a dozen placards, all with happy, smiling aliens on them, clutching a bottle of red weed, and looking healthy, wealthy, and wise. She read from a card.
So thank you and hooray to our sponsor today. The thing that you need, special red weed. It kills all ills, all aches and pains, and Clandusprod foot to inhabited on the brain. Why not take some extra bottles today? You could buy them from this here display. And then sell more to all your friends, who will also be your customers by the time the lesson ends. It's non-addictive and toxic-free, it's never done any harm. Especially to me.
Mrs. Maggrumph then got a bad twitch in her antlers and had to sit down and rest. Meanwhile, Robin turned so pale, both me and Lando looked at her with concern. Are you all right, dear? Asked the Clandusprod kindly. No, get that stuff away from us, it kills, said Robin unhappily. They haven't tested it properly. It causes so many bad things. It's evil.
Stupid child,
said Mrs. Maggrumph.
You're going to be so very wrong. I've been talking double Dutch. If it wasn't safe, why would I have drunk so much?
She hiccuped, and her antlers twitched again.
So enough of your chatter. From now on, I only want to hear talk about classroom matters.
Suddenly the lights in the classroom all turned red, and a jingle started playing. Red weed cures all sorts of ills, from coughs and sneezes to fever and chills. Can tighten your muscles and loosen your feces, and can be used safely by every species. To buy it you don't have to be wealthy, and when you use it you'll be supremely healthy. It helps your front, it helps your backsia, it solves complaints like dyslexia and dyspraxia, and practitioners all work in the medical industry. I can tell you red weed really did it for me. So buy some today and your aches and pains will never pass your way again. In a much smaller voice, so high-pitched that only Glabdiharbits and Camalosians seemed to hear it, and spoken at a ridiculous speed.
Small print red weed might take several lifetimes to take full effect depending on your species. 11 of 8, 9, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 8, 9 beings agreed it was helpful to their ailment. Tested on larger graphs, only 97 of whom die within a week of taking it. Side effects include smoke, strokes, migraines, loss of brains, pain in, and in plentiful cases, death. Not a licensed product, take it at your own risk, because you know you want to.
Robin looked sick. I need to be excused, she said to Mrs. Maggrumph, tears rolling down her face as she put up her arm.
There are leaks,
said Mrs. Maggrumph.
You bunch of freaks. Look here, Mrs. M,
said Bettina.
Robin's had a rough time of it, and I for one don't blame her. She's been through a lot lately, so just leave her be.
It's for red weed, said Robin. I'm allergic.
Nonsense,
snorted Mrs. Maggrumph.
It's for the perfect tonic in every way, and so for that feeling excuse here you'll stay. Sorry,
mouthed Bettina to Robin when Mrs. Maggrumph turned back round to write on the blackened roulette board.
Miserable old big antlered twonk,
she added for good measure.
My hearing works to perfect degrees, mostly because I take red wheelies,
said Mrs. Maggrumph.
Unlucky for you, you caught my attention. You'll both be spending the rest of next week in detention.
I won't bloody be here, muttered Robin rebelliously. Instead she got up to get out of the classroom, and in her haste, but with a wink to the rest of the class, fell over, knocking all the bottles this way and that. I noticed Archelaus picking one up that fell under his chair and pocketing it away in his dimensionally transcendental bag, while everyone else kicked them as far away as they could into the Doosbury Giant-sized mouse holes around the skirting boards at the size of the classroom. It may have been my imagination, but I thought I heard a mouse croak and fall over. There was certainly another of those mysterious rumbles, which made the whole school shake up and down, which impeded Robin as she rushed out the door. "Can I please go and see how Robin is, Mrs?" asked Lando. But Mrs. Maggrumph had smoke coming out of her antlers.
Sit down this instant or I shall fill every chair with glue. I'm not losing another one of you. I brought you here to sow your red weed, and that's what I'm going to do. Now right out from you, I'll be buying you. As for that human, I shall take all her 2 points off her for causing me so much bother.
The class gasped. Would they have to leave Robin behind to face whatever was happening in the school on her own?
Now, said Mr. Clandusprod in the doorway. She won those points fair and square. Anyway, who set those red weed adverts off? I told you we weren't going to do that until we had a full complement of pupils in every class, and ones with rich parents, not these orphans here. It's no good getting this lot hooked on them, they can't pay.
He tended to whisper to Mrs. Maggrumph, so only my Camalosian ears could pick them up. Besides, she's too clever, that one. Best not to have her here asking questions when we refit the school. Mrs. Maggrumph smiled wickedly.
Oh, I'll get around to her hair, and all we understand. After all, we've everything we need in relation to the red weed. These children we just give it away if we were to keep them here another day.
It was an hour later, and we found Robin, nervous but grinning, waiting for us when we left the lesson, but eager to hide from Mrs. Maggrumph. I could hear her tantrums from out here, she said. What happened? Bettina grinned.
Basically, Mr. Clandusprod stepped in and sorted everything. You were nearly kicked off the trip, but not anymore. I'm not sure what he did to save you.
I opened my mouth to tell everyone what I'd heard in his whisper to Mrs. Maggrumph, but as usual, no one was listening to me, and everyone was talking, so I just shut it again.
That was quick thinking, Penguin,
continued Bettina.
I'm sorry I messed it up.
Not a bit of it, grinned Robin. At last my dyspraxia has been useful for something. Not that the red weed stuff would be able to fix it. It doesn't work like that. She continued. Have you analysed the bottle yet, Archie?
Yes,
mused the Mekkion.
but I still don't fully understand it. I'm pretty sure it's the same ingredients as in the other bottle. But here, everything is all fused together, as if the molecules have all changed somehow.
Weird, said Robin, as the class peered round the bottle for a closer look. Oh, Elfrida, there was a message on Margalo's phone. Dr. Hooster is making a house call for squash later on today. Soon, in fact.
That would be absolutely spitting,
said Squash, waving his hat in the air.
Hoorah!
Not before time, poor thing, whispered Lando, going to look after the Agrosian.
Well,
said Bettina to everyone.
This might be our last afternoon of this rotten school. What should we do with it?
We all looked up at her, puzzled.
Well, I can't decide everything for you, can I? I'm going to take Blotchy for a walk while we think of something, and keep an eye on the front door in case somebody comes.
Yes, said Lando. A walk will help clear our minds, and help us think about this afternoon. We'll come with you. We all trooped out as far away from school as we could, as far as the yard would take us. Robin looked back and blinked. Isn't it big, this building? She said.
Yeah,
said Hermione, sleep-flying.
And ugly, and crumbling, just like the teachers.
Weird, the human continued. I haven't seen it since I got here. That seems like a lifetime ago. What do they do with the rest of it? We only have 3 rooms to ourselves. There aren't many where the grown-ups go.
No idea,
said Elfrida.
That's been bothering me too. We thought there were other classes, but it doesn't seem to be likely anymore.
The ground shook beneath our feet again, and we looked around us. We couldn't see any reason why. That's pretty weird too, added Robin. What's causing the ground to shake like that? I wish I could think clearly. Well, said Lando comfortingly, you have been through quite a lot since you got here. It's bound to have an effect on you going through that. At least I have you lot to help me. That's more than I ever had at my old school, even if the teachers' fare weren't quite as psychopathic as here," said Robin gratefully. She turned to look at the building. How strange that my prison cell should suddenly seem so much like a home, just at the point when I'm about to leave it and go for something scary. She tripped and fell over.
"Robin," said Lando alarmed, "you haven't hurt yourself?"
"Blast it," Robin raged, clutching a leg. "Oh, rabbit roaring, or whatever animals they have on Orpheus. I'm always doing this. I forget my legs aren't where I think they are." A worried look came over her face. "What happens if I hurt myself, so I can't go on that trip with you? Does that mean I stay here?" She pulled an aghast face, but feeling her leg decided it was okay. "That's odd though," she said. "A puncture mark. I'd swear that wasn't there before. Hey, do you think what happened to Colin the other night happened to me? I'm sure it wasn't there last night." But before she could say any more, I leapt up and down to shush her, having heard a funny noise from deep underground.
"Now, dear," said Lando to me kindly, "if you need to go to the bathroom indoors, we'll wait for you before we continue with our walk."
I shook my head violently and pressed my ear to the ground, shushing everyone. Margot did the same.
I can hear something.
She said excitedly. Realising it was getting nearer, she quickly pulled her head out of the way. Suddenly a never-ending stream of wildlife shot out of the hole, all tinged a distinctive red colour. Mice, rabbits, badgers, pikers, wombats, ungulars, glabdoodles, prosiers, Agrosian barks, even the lost guinea pig that had apparently been the school pet before Blotchy came along but had disappeared on day 3. Basically every form of small marsupial from each of our home planets and native to Orpheus came rushing out past us, disappearing into the distance.
So they let the guinea pig go after all,
said Hermione, laughing.
Interesting. But why is he red? It wasn't before.
Scary!
Squeaked Jake, running behind Lando for comfort. Blotchy barked protectively, and would gladly have run off his lead to trace a strange menagerie if Bettina hadn't held his lead still.
They can't run that fast normally, can they?
Elfrida asked Archie doubtfully.
Well, I haven't seen it with my own eyes,
He said, taking them off to give them a clean.
I would have said it was impossible. Fact.
Hey,
Said Bettina.
let's see if Blotchy can catch them up.
Blotchy did his best and led them round the corner, but the class all found a hole buried under the yard wall where the animals had got through and couldn't go any further.
I don't know much about biology, but I do know they aren't normally red-coloured.
Offered up Hermione.
What do you think happened?
Red weed, I gasped. They all turned to look at me doubtfully, and I gulped from all the attention.
It couldn't have that effect, could it? So quickly?
Asked Bettina. Robin nodded vigorously. I know you only half believe me, but I tell you that stuff's wicked. Take it in enough quantities and it's deadly. It puts your body into some sort of hyperdrive it just can't cope with. From what I've heard, though, it makes you feel better for the brief moment before that happens, like your body does when it's wide awake, but it stops you from ever sleeping again.
I can relate to that,
said Hermione dryly, and she seemed to be contemplating licking some up before thinking better of it.
That's awful.
Said Elfrida.
That's what we were nearly force-fed today.
Maybe not just today.
Said Archulus, who had been testing the red substance on the ground during the conversation.
I've just rigged up one of my spare pairs of X-ray spectacles and daubed it with trace elements of this red weed so I can track where else it might be.
He paused for dramatic effect.
Well, where?
Asked Bettina.
Wobbling with Zula birds eating walnuts. Don't keep us in suspense, you ropey robot.
It's everywhere. Literally, everywhere. The ground where these creatures came out especially, but everywhere else too. It's under our feet as we walked here, all around our hands, especially around our mouths.
Jake squeaked.
No!
He wailed.
I don't want to be super strong and die. I'm too young. I'm far too fluffy.
The thing is,
Said Archulus, scratching his head.
it should still be benign. I wondered at first if it was a chemical reaction in the body that causes it to change, but not that I can tell. It's weird. It's as if all the creatures suddenly became super strong the minute they made it out the ground. But why? There must be something that causes it to suddenly start working.
Wait,
Said Elfrida.
maybe they've been injecting us with it, by those puncture marks.
I felt my tail instinctively. Oh dear, said Robin, feeling a leg.
I can't see any sign of the red weed there, though.
Said the Mekkion, getting out his tracer.
It's mostly around the mouth, though, but a little around the hands.
Archulus, scratching his head, tried his tracer on everyone else and himself again. We were all the same, even blotchy. Then it's nothing to do with the puncture marks, asked Robin, confused. But how do we get infected? I mean, are we infected? I guess it makes sense, though. I mean, Blotchy would have barked his head off if they tried to give him something that was poisonous, wouldn't he? Even under sedation.
Maybe not,
said Archulus.
I'm beginning to think the marks are connected, or else why would they be there?
Without asking, he flipped me over so my tail was under his arm and peered at it with his X-ray spectacles as I watched all my pencils drop to the floor.
A sedative,
Archulus said with alacrity unusual in a Mekkion, in one movement whipping me back the right way up and on my feet again. His features went back to the normal setting.
So that's what they've been up to. But why?
Well,
said Elfrida, thinking.
you said they were measuring you in your sleep, weren't you, Colin?
She thought.
Do you know, since you mentioned it, I vaguely remember something like that too. I thought it was a dream at the time. Were they testing the effects of the red weed on us instead, do you think?
Archulus raised an eyebrow.
Robin, you know more about this stuff than the rest of us. Is it definitely safe in small doses?
Robin shrugged. I think so. Most people who got addicted tended to die in months, not minutes, but that might just be for humans.
Well,
said Archulus.
I think it's safe to risk it, but I only taste a very small amount.
He looked round at the rest of us.
If this kills me,
He said seriously.
please leave my body to science. Or if not, then, please leave my body to science fiction.
Then, hesitating, he picked up the bottle of red weed he picked up in class, lifted the lid and licked it slightly. Lando went to catch him in case he fainted or turned red. Are you all right? He asked. Tentatively, feeling all his limbs and pulling them off to look at them in turn, Archulus nodded.
What does it taste of?
Asked Elfrida as the Mekkion tentatively felt around his body. He pressed a button so his shoulders shrugged.
Nothing,
He said.
Everything. It's peculiar. It tastes exactly like something I've eaten a lot lately. But not specifically like anything.
We looked at each other, confused.
Let me try it.
Said XXXX bravely.
Your taste buds are probably set to bland, but me, I can tell any ingredient from any planet in seconds.
Lando tried to stop him, but XXXX just nodded and bravely put the bottle to his lips.
Not bad.
He murmured absent-mindedly.
A bit more sauce and it could be tasty.
He looked up, confused.
Oh, she's right. It really does taste like everything.
We laughed.
So much for those famous taste buds.
Mocked Hermione.
No,
Said XXXX as seriously as we'd ever seen him.
I mean, it literally tastes of everything. Suddenly everything I've ever tasted on this planet. But what can that mean?
Elfrida turned pale.
Archie, can you run some tests on the food replicator machines?
She asked.
I think they might have been slowly poisoned. I also think I know now why we've been monitored and apparently tested and measured. We said that the teachers let the guinea pig go after they turned him red. Only they didn't, because we're the guinea pigs.
It's too dangerous.
Squeaked Jake, looking sick. Only you've taken in enough quantities, I think, said Robin comfortingly. It's not as if we've been eating it, but I worry about how much the right quantity might be.
Maybe.
Said Archulus, a look of panic on his face.
That's what we've been testing on us. We all have puncture marks now, right?
We all checked and we did.
Maybe. They don't know how much is too much, so they've been testing the red weed on these animals here, and then on each of us to see how it affects our individual species.
It's not done much so far then.
Puzzled Elfrida.
I mean, we're all fine, apart from poor Squash.
She turned round to where the Agrosian was merrily picking daisies. He stopped to blow her a kiss.
I think they're testing for side effects too.
Said Archulus.
Poor Squash got the short straw for some reason. We have to protect him at all costs in case they get rid of him, the way they did our class pet. You were quite right, Elfrida,
said Archulus, putting his equipment away after studying the food replicator machines inside.
The traces are much stronger here. There are signs of red weed everywhere, according to my X-ray spectacles.
He looked her up and down.
Nice underwear, by the way. Cute algebra pattern.
He said. She slapped him so hard that his spare lenses fell off.
Eyes to the front, robo-boy.
She glared, but half smiling. Then Archelaus made another discovery.
Sorry, I'm not programmed for social decorum. I say, do you remember my speech in science lesson the other day about universalium?
Like it was yesterday.
Hermione rolled her eyes.
Mostly because it was.
Well,
Oh, said Archelaus.
do you remember how I said that universalium was a compound metal made up of all the 11 elements unique to each of our 11 planets, but one that only existed in theory because nobody had ever put them together in the laboratory because they were afraid of what might happen?
Yes,
Said Bettina.
Well, I think we just found out what happened. In its liquid state anyway. It turns into this red glue.
Isn't that good for us, though? Asked Robin. I mean, they are naturally occurring chemical compounds, aren't they? Archelaus pressed a button, and his head shook from side to side.
No one put together like this. Technically, an atom bomb is just a bunch of chemical elements forced together where they don't belong, and there's a reason nature keeps them apart naturally. It is wiser than us.
so what are you saying?
Asked Bettina.
Well,
Said Archelaus.
logically, I wouldn't want to put that stuff inside without first running some tests. As Elfrida said, I have this awful sinking feeling that we are the tests. But it's not from the injection, it's from the food we've been eating.
XXXX clutched his throat.
I'll be it again.
He said.
Well, between meals, perhaps.
Mekkion walked to his makeshift laboratory he had on his bedside table.
I think we'll be alright for now.
Oh, said Archelaus.
We don't eat too much of it in one go. And you're as safe as the rest of us, XXXX. You have a much wider and thicker bloodstream to the fact that can absorb it all. I can't tell exactly what it is or what it's made from with the tests that I've run, but its effect does seem to be accumulative rather than immediate.
So we're only poisoned over time.
Asked Bettina.
Just great.
Hermione rolled her eyes.
So we get to die anyway, yet suffer all of Mrs. Maggrumph' lessons first. Terrific. Won't we up in the next life? Knowing my luck, I'll probably get stuck as a Spice Girl tribute band member or something. But why? Asked
Bettina, ignoring her friend. That list on the wall, said Robin. I think they're checking the effects against our personalities to see if they're cured. But they're personality traits, not something wrong that needs to be fixed. Especially without consulting us. Adults are always giving children medication against their rights. And poor Squash got dosed quicker than the rest of us. That's why he's changed personality so drastically.
Oh well,
The Agrosian shrugged, all sense of hostility and rage gone by now.
never mind. That's the way the red weed crumbles.
They can reverse it.
Said Archelaus.
I'm sure they can.
But who's they?
Asked Elfrida.
I mean, who do we trust? Nobody here, that's for sure.
When we go on that trip tomorrow to Decreeta,
Said Bettina.
we can find the first adult we see. How about that intergalactic president? They are employed to keep people safe after all, and we're all citizens of the universe, even though we're not allowed to vote yet. Remember, Elrond listened when no one else did. We studied it in province. Who even is the intergalactic president nowadays, anyway?
She asked Elfrida.
Glabdiharbit.
Said the Mrasianart straight away.
He's the one holding an environmental conference on Decreeta while we're there.
She sighed.
How I wish we were older so people would take us seriously, and we could just walk right up to him.
Talking of which,
Said Bettina.
shouldn't you be in your grown-up costume by now, just in case the inspectors or the doctor comes?
Elfrida rushed off nodding, and the rest of the class slunk away, until just me and Robin were left. I'm so sorry, I said slowly. About your parents, I mean. I understand now what you mean about the red weed. I wasn't sure at first if you were just overreacting, but Archelaus doesn't get all hot and bothered without good reason. Watching them die like that when you tried everything to save them, and it was all in vain, must have been awful. Feeling so alone, betrayed by everyone. That must have been so upsetting for you. No wonder you tried so hard to become a new person when you came here, so you didn't have to feel anything ever again. I'm rather glad you're you, though. Robin turned on me. How on Orpheus do you know about that? Oh, sorry, I said. I read your files when we were in the office. But only have them in my hands for a few seconds, said Robin. I shrugged. As I said before, I'm a Camalosian. I speed read, remember? It helps in getting to the heart of the contracts in a hurry. Then you know, said Robin carefully, eyeing me carefully, how damaged I am. Only Mr. Clandusprod was meant to know about that, confidentially, and now I regret telling him with what we know now. She shrank back. Don't you dare tell the others, or I'll order you never to speak to me again. A thought occurred to her. Well, I wouldn't speak to you anyway. I went to hug her, but she backed off. I know how damaged we all are, I said. We all have something wrong with us, something in our past that went spectacularly wrong to lead us here. I know there's a lot wrong with me, but we're getting through it. Please, I know why you find it so hard to trust. I would too. It's the grown-ups who messed up, not us. We're your friends. We've got your back. Robin still looked doubtful, so I ploughed on. I promise I'll keep your secret, Robin. She stared me out. How do I know that? She asked. No one keeps their promises, here or on Earth. Haven't I kept it up till now? I said. Plus you know I'm not a blabbermouth. That's true, she said, relaxing slightly. Look, I said, a secret for a secret. That's how we trade on my world when we're young. We don't start getting pocket money until we're 40. We only spend it on pens and notebooks anyway. Nobody else here knows about this, and I'm going to keep it that way. But I have to trust someone with my secret. And you seem like the one, Penguin. What happened to me was... well, it made me the same. You know how I don't like speaking in crowds, or at all much. Yes, said Robin, her arms folded. Well, I was whispered in her ear. This is what happened to me. I saw something bad. I was made to keep quiet. And I told her my story, of all the eyes that bore into me every night on Camalosia, of the fear I would get in my throat every time I tried to talk, of my desire to shut myself away and become an observer of life, not a participant, of my worry and anxiety that this would follow me around for the rest of my life, but my hope that I could keep it away forever and ever, if only I never dared speak about it. So you see, I said, I know what it is to be damaged. Not that it's a bad thing. I mean, we're all, 10 by Earth standards approximately? Who hasn't been damaged by our age? That's plenty of time to have had your hearts broken, to have ended up disappointed, to have your dreams evaporate, your skin peeled off layer by layer, to have discovered that your own idea of who you are clashes with someone else's idea of who they are, or who you should be, probably multiple times over. Adults think childhood is all pink fluffy algebraphs dancing on rainbows, but it really isn't. Childhood is about learning your way to navigate through a universe that doesn't work as well as it should, and coming to terms with the fact that you won't always feel safe, and that there won't always be people there to protect you from it, but hopefully still with enough protection to get you through that stage. I gasped, having spoken my longest sentence in years. Robin just looked at me sadly. We are none of us free of damage, and any adult who thinks children are has never paid close attention to them. I only mention your damage, so I can help free you of it, as I hope you will free me of mine. Oh, Robin said. Colin, I'm so very sorry. As am I, for you, I said. But you are my friend. I will try to put you back together again. You try to do the same for me. And if we fail, then, well, at least we will be damaged together. We hugged tightly. So tightly I think I shed another layer of skin a few weeks early, while Robin sobbed hard from her eyes. So much for being a tougher human now, said Robin, sniffling away more watery leakage. How I envied humans with their inbuilt release mechanisms, I thought, as I strained to cry, but found as always that nothing came, forcing me to lick my own dry eyeballs instead. I'm sorry if I was being defensive, Colin, said Robin sadly. It's just, this has changed me so much. I used to think that I knew what my life was going to be, where I would grow up, where I would grow old, where the rest of my life would pan out. To have it all removed from you by chance is one thing, but to have it removed by evil people who must deep down have known the damage they were causing, and who did it anyway, to see them get away with it is quite another. To know that you could have changed the outcome, if only the people you loved had listened to you, if only you hadn't been a child, if only you'd have been able to tell them definitively of the harm they were doing to themselves. But you did try to tell them, didn't you? I asked. Don't forget, I I read your whole homework, complete with crossings out and all the things you wanted to say but changed your mind. Robin looked on aghast. Well, she said, I guess you can't keep a secret from a Camalosian, can you? I am bursting to confide in someone. Yes, I did, but they didn't listen, and that might be what hurts the most, because I saw what was coming and tried to stop it, but the people I loved would rather have made themselves ill than believe I was right. And now there is a gigantic hole in my life that will be there forever, because they would rather die than listen to me. What does that say about me? It says that you were a child, and no one listens to a child. About anything, I said, with the sudden wisdom of a Mrasianart. The thing is, though, Colin, she said, they got away with it. They don't have to cope with the repercussions of what they did, because they're dead. As much as I'd rather be alive, it's me who's left here trying to cope, rolling with punches from a fight I tried to stop a long time ago, childhood shattered into a million pieces. Every single day now my life is different because of something that wouldn't have happened if I'd been older, and they listened to me. She sighed. I'm going to carry this empty feeling round with me the rest of my life. I don't even have the luxury of guilt or blaming myself for it because someone else did it. Yet I'm the one who suffers while everyone who caused the damage gets away with it, enjoying their riches. That's what maybe hurts most of all. I always thought that the grown-up world was kind and fair and noble, that they knew something I didn't about how to make the world a taller, more grown-up place than it seemed from knee-height. Now I know that's wrong. All my life I've been in training for the moment I would be tall enough to live like them, my childish things set aside. But instead I find my childhood set aside by more childish creatures than me, who put wealth over health and income over life, and who didn't learn the basic lessons I did in the playground. And they get away with it over and over again. Where is the nobility in that? Now I know they are wrong, and we are right, and I feel the clock ticking when I will end up being one of them too, having to be corrupt in a corrupt world, and I hate it. I stretch out a claw. We will never be one of them, I said. I promise, for we learn and we remember. We will hold them to account somehow, all of us working together. There is more than one of you in the fight now, Robin. Thank you, she sighed. I so needed to hear that, Colin. I'm sorry I snapped at you. You were a good listener, and an even better friend. We hugged for as long as we could get away with, before someone would have noticed us missing. By the time we caught up with the others, Elfrida was dressed in her disguise. She looked incredibly grown up to us. She was peering blindly down Archulus's spare eyes, which she was wearing like spectacles, had her hair put up in a bun, and was wearing clothes that everyone agreed made her look much older. Luckily for us, she was tall for her age. Mrasianarts tending to grow into old age, although they seem to keep growing into old age without stopping, barring accidents. I could thus pass as a young, enthusiastic teacher rather than a pupil. Without a mirror, Elfrida had no way of seeing for herself, so Archulus took a photograph and showed her that way instead.
Good sprod,
she declared.
I look like my own mother.
Then she grinned goofily at us all.
Well, it's a good thing I've still got a few years yet before I'm grown up, so that face doesn't look back at me in the mirror yet, right? The scariest thing about growing up is not looking young anymore. Now, is everybody ready?
Buck up, Penguin,
hissed Bettina.
You're making more noise than an Argybrath on roller skates than the crockery retailers. We have to be stealthy.
Easy for you to say, hissed Robin. You're not crawling through a ventilation shaft knee-deep in Habridat feathers, Glabdiharbit fur, Agrosian fluff and discarded Camalosian skin.
Well then, said Bettina, that lot should cover up the sound, but it doesn't. It sounds like you have an army of mini Glabdiharbits in there. On horseback.
She turned to Jake, a thought occurring to her.
Do you have horses on Glabdiharbit, or are they too scary?
Oh yes,
squeaked Jake.
Little cute ones. We keep them in stables under the table. It's a stable table.
Finally, after what seemed like an age, Robin was at the door to the hall, looking the worse for wear for a climb through the ventilation shaft. Quick, she said. It's almost time. We have to beat the caretaker.
Why do you think I was trying to hurry you up?
Complained Bettina.
Oh, don't worry,
said Hermione.
He'll be yelling us getting to the door. We've got plenty of time. I just hope everyone else is safely out of the way.
Everyone stepped through the threshold, which only the four of us had seen. That's the door where the laboratory equipment is stored, whispered Robin, walking through. That's for plush staff room, and that's for free headmaster's office.
What's his here?
Said Elfrida with great excitement. An airing cupboard.
Oh.
Soon we were at the front door and peering through the letterbox. It was an especially big one, obviously designed with doozier-sized parcels in mind. We dangled Jake out of it as lookout to see if anyone was coming.
Coast clear!
He said.
Do I look all right?
Asked Elfrida for the 1,000th time.
100 happy Habridats in a helicopter. You look amazing,
Said Bettina.
Why, anyone would think you were positively ancient in that get-up.
Jake squeaked.
Wait! He's here! Quick before he rings the doorbell!
Which one? Hissed Robin. Doctor or Inspector?
I don't know!
Squeaked Jake.
Oh dear!
Wait,
Said Elfrida.
can you see the shuttle?
I think so.
Said Jake.
It's like a blue box. From the little I can see, it looks bigger on the inside. And the figure's wearing a long scarf and a fez.
Definitely the doctor.
Said Elfrida knowingly, lifting Jake gently out the way and pulling Squash with her as she opened the door. She shut it again, leaving us peering through the letterbox.
Dr. Hooster, I presume?
Asked Elfrida, levitating down the road with a waddle, as if she was wearing high heels, and putting on her best fake deep voice.
How positively charming to make your acquaintance.
She passed over a collection of pencils I had given her.
I know how hungry you get on those interstellar journeys.
She said.
If you would like, we can have a word on your shuttle.
Oh, said Dr. Hooster, thank you.
He bit into a pencil.
My favourite treat, he said, crunching it. I'm here to see the Agrosian, he said, but I found a rabbit instead. A red rabbit. Never seen one of those before.
Ah,
Beamed Elfrida.
yes, isn't the wildlife here interesting? We heard you liked your pencils to chew over. We have a Camalosian here at the school with us, you know, lovely little fella, always scribbling down something or other. Did you have a good journey?
Well, said Dr. Hooster, up until an asteroid belt on the corner of Sirius B I did.
Said Elfrida.
I know, it's absolute murder. I don't know how we get away with it.
She leaned in conspiratorially.
Of course, I voted for the other side, so I always say if you're going to vote in any old Belobrat with a blabbermouth and charm, you're not going to get things done properly, are you?
She reached over and held Squash's hand.
Here is the patient, Doctor.
What is he? Asked Dr. Hooster, peering at him, while Squash doffed his school cap. He seemed to be a bit absent-minded, and had completely forgotten our phone call.
By appearance, I'd say he was an Agrosian, but by character he's more like a friendly Clandusprod. Is he an Agrosian hybrid, maybe?
No,
Said Elfrida.
all Agrosian. We're a bit worried about him, though, as he's suffered a complete personality change lately. Would you be good enough to run some tests and check he's all right? Most obliged, madam.
Said Squash to the doctor, raising his cap again.
Is it time for school yet, Mummy?
By now Elfrida had wandered so far away that we were eagerly leaning on the front door, trying to hear what she was saying. And inevitably it fell over with a loud squeak, depositing us in a pile of hooves, beaks, wings, feathers, snouts, antlers, heads, shoulders, knees, toes and tails. My class, said Elfrida, barely breaking sweat.
You're worried about their classmate, naturally. I really think they ought to stay inside, though.
She picked me up.
Except Colin. He'll be good at taking notes and translating for us. Now, to your ship.
Dr. Hooster was nervously hitting Squash on the knee with a big hammer.
Tickles!
He said.
They are,
Said the doctor, getting Squash to put his tongue out.
No,
He said.
so cute.
He sighed, looking at the flowers outside the shuttle window. Dr. Hooster looked at us.
I'm going to try something that would normally be very dangerous and stupid. Be ready to run if he reverts back to his old ways.
He got out a wet fish from his dimensionally transcendent bag and slapped Squash around the face with it. The Agrosian clapped.
That was fun. Again.
Extraordinary, said the doctor. If he didn't look so much like an Agrosian, I would never ever have believed it. Does he ever gnash his teeth or make rude gestures at anyone?
Not in the last few days.
Said Elfrida sadly.
Do you know what's happened to him, Doctor? Can we get the old him back again?
Dr. Hooster scratched his head.
I'm not altogether sure. Agrosian biology is still something of a mystery to our doctors. We've only had about 100 years to study it. Any idea what made it come on? Any bangs on the head recently?
Several,
said Elfrida, concerned.
It's odd, though, said Dr. Hooster. Agrosians pretty much are the toughest bodies in the universe. Almost millennia of war breeding, I suppose, and I can't see any signs of concussion.
He flashed a bright light into Squash's eyes.
Pretty lights
He said, clapping.
again!
Elfrida coughed. He might have taken something, but we're not sure. Dr. Hooster looked concerned.
I'm going to run some quick blood tests then,
he said, and put a needle into Squash's arm.
Tickles!
Squash giggled. A steady stream of green blood came gushing out. Dr. Hooster stuck some litmus paper into the sample, which dissolved on impact. Confused, the doctor tried it again, leant too far in, and soon found the sample dissolving his tie.
This isn't right,
he said, and looked at it under a microscope.
Red flecks, he said. Has Squash here been drinking anything red? Possibly poisonous?
oh dear,
said Elfrida.
we were very worried it might be that.
Taking off her wig, she explained to the doctor who she was, and the reason for the subterfuge, and about the red rabbit.
I think we might have found the source of the epidemic you were talking about on the news as well. It's here.
She passed over part of Archelaus's sample, having remembered to keep enough back for us.
Said the doctor, looking at it under a microscope. It looks benign, though I don't quite know what it is.
Red weed,
said Elfrida.
Apparently it's some new kind of wonder miracle cure, made up of properties from all over the universe, fused together. They keep trying to sell it to us in this school, and on Earth from what my human friend tells me.
Interesting,
said Dr. Hooster, turning the sample over and poking it with a big stick.
It seems harmless enough, though. It looks as if it needs something to make it go.
He turned to us.
I still don't quite understand, though. If you're a teacher, why not just ban your pupils from taking it if you think it's unsafe? That's a universal adult privilege, after all.
We looked guilty,
I'm really a pupil,
said Elfrida.
we both are. I'm sorry for the subterfuge. We just thought, well, if a 10-year-old told you one of our classmates was being poisoned, we just asked to be put through to our teacher, and they're the ones who expected doing it to him. With this stuff,
She said.
we're sorry.
Dr. Hooster was quite shocked.
Is this true? He asked me. Remember, Camalosians never ever lie.
I nodded my head and pulled out as many of my relevant notes as I could.
Said the doctor, speed reading through the entire last few days' worth of notes. You certainly have enough grounds for suspicion here. What's say I take Squash here away for tests? And these samples too, so we can test it thoroughly. And Miss Red Rabbit. Will that be all right? Now, don't you worry. It sounds as if none of you have been in this school for that long, so I'm hoping the effects will be reversible.
Oh, yes, please.
Nodded Elfrida.
Thank you for taking this seriously. So few adults listen to children.
I've seen some mighty strange things in this universe, shrugged Dr. Hooster. I mean, I was on the news only yesterday talking about environmental damage, and I was there when the universe nearly ended 100 years ago, after all. What I don't understand is why anyone should sell something poisonous, and why so many things should be going wrong all around the universe, all at the same time.
It's that Mrs. Maggrumph,
Shuddered Elfrida.
She hates us. She wants to kill us. Oh, please, can't you take all of us away with you too?
Dr. Hooster lowered his glasses.
No, he said sadly. Squash is visibly sick, so I could argue my case for taking him away from his rightful guardians. I wouldn't be able to argue that about the rest of you. It sounds from what I've read in these notes as if everyone else is unaffected so far.
And she might still kill us while you're away,
said Elfrida sadly.
No,
said Dr. Hooster, pressing his fingers together with his tail tip.
Seriously, I don't think she's setting out to kill you, or even make you ill. If she would, she'd have done it by now. I mean, 11 orphans out here on a lifeless planet, no one would ever need know what happened to you. But you're all still here, so she must have other plans for you. I think you're all safe here for now, perhaps safer than with me being chased across the universe. But I also think you need to be very, very careful.
Thank you, Doctor,
said Elfrida, and we took turns shaking him by the hand. I also fed him my 14th favourite pencil to say thank you. For the journey home, I said, and Dr. Hooster patted me on the head. Just then another shuttle landed.
Maybe it's the inspector.
Elfrida cried, putting her disguise back on. I'll look after Squash, said Dr. Hooster, and I'll take good care of him back at Medicus, I promise. You get out there and do what you need to do. We walked to the door and looked back gratefully. Dr. Hooster was pushing Squash into a chair and fixing him in with a giant safety belt. To make sure he isn't squished, the doctor exclaimed as we said goodbyes again. Well, I thought now I'd seen everything. An adult, but it really did seem as if we could trust. We had just made it in time.
Inspector!
Squeaked Jake through the door.
I think a lot of them, actually. 2 Doosbury Giants, a Habridat, and a pair of Mekkions.
Elfrida and I dived inside the door, hoping to answer it again before the inspectors made any noise. To our horror, though, one of the Mekkions pressed the button, and his robotic arms spread out and pressed the doorbell before he had even fully disembarked off the shuttle. In a hurry, Elfrida rushed back out the door again, while I peered through the letterbox, watching Dr. Hooster's shuttle rise into the air.
What happened to Squash?
Asked Bettina, but I just wrote down the word safe and passed it around the class while I listened.
Well, I'm glad,
said Bettina.
But how are we going to cover up for him now he's not here? He's such a noisy character, or at least he usually is. He's so hard to miss. You're about the right size, Colin,
she said, pulling a red jumper out of the store cupboard, daubing some glue on my head, and stuffing some of the red fluff that had gathered in the ventilator shaft on my protesting head.
Nobody will notice that you're missing. You're so quiet. And if they do, we could just whip that disguise off again. It only needs to be till tomorrow.
She stood back and studied me.
It needs something else, though.
Here, said Robin, pulling out the protective doll Squash had given her during her night in the ventilation shaft, and pulling bits from its top knot and sticking them on me. I know it was given to me as a present to keep me safe, but it's our turn to keep Squash safe now.
Perfect,
smiled Bettina.
I couldn't have done it any better myself. Well, I suppose I could.
Greetings, said the Doosbury inspector. Please take me to your kitchens. I mean your leader.
Gentlemen, ladies,
Elfrida said at the door, trying her best to sound grown up once more.
How good of you to come to our humble little establishment all the way out here. Did you all have a good journey? Isn't the new intergalactic byrone murder? I keep saying we ought to make it 87 lanes of traffic, not 86.
Ay, offered up a hand.
All apart from the food of the interplanetary service stations, even us Doosbury Giants won't eat that stuff.
Elfrida chuckled, in just the same faux giggle all adults always used when they didn't really know why they were laughing, but wanted to be polite.
And you are?
He asked.
That's right,
said Elfrida.
I am.
She winced.
That is to say, we're studying existentialism in class today, so I'm in the frame of mind that names really aren't that important. Now, where would you like to inspect first?
We always like to start in the kitchens,
said B&B, another Doosbury Giant.
A good school starts in the stomach, we always say.
I'm afraid to tell you we only have food replicator machines in the school,
said Elfrida, disappearing through the door, our class just ahead of her in case she got into trouble.
Budget cuts, you understand?
Dear me,
said A. That's a shame.
It will have to be a negative mark, I'm afraid. Food is the single most important thing you can inspect in a school. Perhaps we'd better sample the school food anyway while we're here, as I haven't had lunch yet. I mean, to see what the food's like for the sake of the pupils.
He filled in a box on the clipboard he carried with him and stopped in the corridor to eat a sandwich.
I thought you wanted to try out the food,
asked Elfrida.
I do. Box ticking in corridors always make me hungry,
he explained, stopping to take another bite.
What about the path on the way in?
Said one of the Mekkions.
It was all very dangerous and broken up, not safe at all, and the ground keeps shaking, and some of the wildlife seem red.
Yes,
said Elfrida.
Well, we don't worry about it too much. We've only lost 3 pupils down those holes so far. The shaking is because the ground is incredibly unstable here. It's a stupid place to put a public building, but that's budget cuts for you. As for the wildlife, it's a, school experiment. Gone wrong. Low budget, you know, low budget. Anyway, don't stop here,
said Elfrida, panicking as the inspectors made note.
I mean, there's so much for you to see, and there'll be time to eat afterwards.
The best time to eat is always now, so that you can enjoy it,
said B&B.
The second best time to eat is always just, so you are nice and full for whatever job is in hand.
Just think how quickly you could get your job done and be back in home in time for tea if you hurry,
said Elfrida, taking him by the arm. We could hear the handle of the caretaker's office door moving, very, very slowly.
Here,
said Horace, surprised.
who might you be?
The inspectors.
Said A, holding out a hand, realising his sandwich was in it, and quickly offering up the other one.
Are you the caretaker?
That's me.
Croaked Horace.
I was just having a nice nap. Very sensible.
Said Hortense, school inspector, scribbling a note on her pad.
Power naps are good for bursts of energy in the workplace. Is it all part of your regular schedule? Oh,
said Horace.
Mighty powerful that this is. It's been going on since about this time yesterday, so it has.
Said the inspectors in unison, getting up their clipboards.
Sign Borg.
Said the two Mekkions, holding out their robotic limbs.
We notice that everything is quite untidy in this corridor. The entrance to your ventilation shaft is open for a start, and dropping some dust and fur on the floor. Also, the floor appears to be stained by some sort of a red substance.
Well,
Said Elfrida.
budget problems, you know. It's a wonder this school still manages to run, really. That's why I thought we'd better ring you all up and see if there's anything dangerous here. Don't want to hurt the little kiddywinkles now, do we? Bless the little cotton furballs.
Wait,
Said Horace, apparently noticing Elfrida for the first time.
who might you be?
That
The Mrasianart said.
is an excellent hypothetical existential question. I must remember to ask in my next lecture on existentialism and philosophy. Good thinking, Horace. I love it when the staff help me out with my lesson plans.
Horace scratched his head, setting off a sea of feathers to the floor.
There's something not quite right here.
He muttered.
Maybe I'm still dreaming. Maybe I got up too quickly. Maybe I should go back to bed.
Yes,
Said Elfrida as lightly as she could.
you go back to sleep for another day or two. Horace, the children are fine doing all the extra heavy lifting. I know the little backs aren't built for it, but there's no child labour laws out here in the universe just yet.
She turned her attention to the laboratory.
Now in here is where we keep all the scientific equipment for running tests on the children against their will. Please note the CCTV cameras so we can invade their privacy and keep an eye on them at all times. They don't like it, and it's probably illegal, but how else are we going to spy on the little ones and hinder their development, eh?
The inspectors made notes, furiously. Elfrida had got to the door into the great hall, where we were already waiting to greet her, in as big a state as we could manage, and play fighting.
Children!
Said Elfrida, standing with her hands on her hips in just a grown-up sort of a way.
Now, no eating your classmates. You all remember what happened last time. We lost half the class that way.
The inspectors all gulped.
I am sorry.
She explained.
I'm sure they won't eat you. They're only half feral, aren't you, children?
Said Jake, leaping right next to the inspectors and making them jump. Elfrida led everyone to the kitchen.
As you can see,
She said.
all our food is from replicators and rationed with vouchers. Poor XXXX here is famished a lot of the time, aren't you, boy? He can't concentrate in class at all. But that's what happens with... So, no money in the kitty. I'm sure you won't shut us down just because of a harmless little bit of starvation here and there, and move us to a decent planet that adults would actually care about the children under their care, will you?
B&B reached out apologetically and ruffled XXX's hair.
How are you, son?
She asked.
You're so thin. Does this mean school been starving you? Yes, I'm famished.
He replied honestly. B&B took pity on him and gave him the rest of a service station sandwich.
He's actually eating it.
She cried.
Nobody would ever eat a service sandwich if they didn't have to. Well, that settles it. The poor boy must really be starving.
She filled in a few crosses on a clipboard.
That's the most important part of the inspection done, and I think we might have to shut this school down.
Good idea.
Said Elfrida before covering herself.
Oh, I mean, what a shame, dear. Still, you know best. You will help me get these pupils sent to a nicer school somewhere else in the galaxy, won't you? Somewhere warm, with lots of outdoor space for running and playing games in.
The school bell rang.
Oh,
Said Elfrida.
first lesson of the day. Well, I can't keep the class waiting. You could all make your way back to the shuttle.
Oh,
Said A.
we'd really like rather to stay and see the lesson in action, if you don't mind. It's only a small point on our inspections compared to the important things, like the kitchens and the cloakrooms that get most of the marks, but we might as well be thorough while we're here. Don't mind us, just do what you normally do. We'll just stand at the side here and finish our lunch.
Very well,
said Elfrida, thinking on her feet.
Step this way, please, so we are all far, far out of the teacher's sight, and you don't put her off.
She realised, as she said this too late, that this was hard to do for Doosbury Giants.
This is a good chance for you to see the new teaching style which just come into vogue on Maggrumph. It's known as the Maggrumph system, or Grumpy and Green for short. The teacher has been known to maul anyone she's unfamiliar with. That was particularly hard on the first-year students when they arrived, and all got eaten.
The inspectors all made more notes and looked concerned. We all trooped in.
Right, class,
said Mrs. Maggrumph in a foul mood.
by all 32 seconds, mind. I could teach you so many valuable things in our time.
I croaked, doffing my imaginary cap to her and pretending to be Squash.
Lovely day, heck,
Exploded Mrs. Maggrumph.
and you were up to no good too, I reckon, I bet. I'm stuck here teaching this class and there's a million things I'd rather do than put up with the likes of you.
She looked at Elfrida, still in her adult uniform, trying to hide in the back row.
Why are you dressed up like a toff, Mrasianart? You look very stupid. Take it off.
Elfrida did as she was told, as luckily she had a school uniform still on underneath her disguise, but tried to nonchalantly shrug to the inspectors at the side while she was doing so, as if to say, humour her, this happens all the time. They scribbled down notes furiously.
You're a poor counsel, we can't ready,
Said Mrs. Maggrumph to the class.
I can't say I'm thrilled. If you were like pets, I'd have most of you put down and killed. Given that you have no parents, I shall read them to you out loud. So sit back and suffer, you have nothing in me of which to be proud.
She handed Robin her report card.
Language indecipherable, conduct intolerable, intelligence negligible, personality horrible. Even given that she comes from the most backwards of places, she's so stupid she can't even tie her own shoelaces.
Robin glanced down at her feet. They were indeed undone again. Without being seen, the inspector stood at the back of the class, listening at the door, still taking notes.
You,
She said to me.
language empty, conduct bizarre, intelligence intelligible, personality There is no personality, he's just a cipher who never speaks a word, and he's writing a kind of cipher. Pointless even for someone that small, you may as well not be here at all.
The inspectors looked annoyed and scribbled away.
Dear,
Mrs. Maggrumph turned to the Belobrat.
language argumentative, conduct stroppy, intelligence minuscule, personality bossy. She has no friends because she drives them into the ground. Everyone hates her bossing them around. 3 heads she might have, but she has no faults worth thinking. If she was my child, I'd totally start drinking.
The inspectors were agitated and scribbled down even faster.
Jake,
Mrs. Maggrumph moved to the Glabdiharbit.
language squeaky, conduct sly, intelligence fair-brained, personality shy. Response is always the same, and it drives me mad. Instead of putting things right, just sits there looking sad.
At this revelation, Jake's natural response was to sit there, looking sad. The inspectors began to talk amongst themselves.
Archers,
The teacher continued.
language robotic, conduct brain, intelligence selective, personality a clone. A fine scientific brain he rarely uses, except to make constant excuses. In the time I've known him, he's burned 6 gas things and 8 fuses.
The inspectors tried to interrupt, but still Mrs. Maggrumph ploughed on.
Mileage,
She said.
language sarcastic, conduct bird-brained, intelligence feeble, personality strange, always asleep and easily distracted. Well, I want to say my hair is so rude it's been redacted.
The inspectors coughed, but the teacher wasn't done yet.
Elfrida, language decorative, conduct baiting, intelligence song, personality grating, off in her own little world. I think she's around the bend. No wonder she never seems to have any friends.
Now look here, as an inspector,
Began A. Mrs. Maggrumph ploughed on.
Londo, language stupid, conduct thick, intelligence non-existent, personality makes me sick. Lives in a dream world where everyone's kind and helps each other. Clearly he's out of his mind.
Hey, coughed.
I'm not altogether sure that...
Mrs. Maggrumph was unstoppable.
Squash, language, swearing, conduct, rude, intelligence, poor, personality, misconstrued. He gets very cross and shouts and bites. His class books are always such a terrible sight.
Hey, rubbed his forehead.
If you could just stop teaching a moment.
But still the Maggrumph kept going.
XXX is next. Language, style, conduct, greedy, intelligence like a hole in the donut, personality, needy. If he thought about his work as much as he did food, then maybe some of it would be do some good.
Madam,
said BMB in protest. She had clearly taken quite a shine to XXXX, but Mrs. Maggrumph hadn't seemed to notice.
Margaret,
She smiled next.
language perfect, conduct sweet, intelligence brilliant, personality sweet. The one child in class is a pleasure to teach. In tests the marks are always far out of reach.
Margot was deeply embarrassed to hear this in front of her newly made friends. The inspectors looked puzzled and went back to writing notes. Suddenly the tide seemed to be turning. Elfrida looked nervous. Mrs. Maggrumph had obviously just clocked who these strangers were. Oh dear, this wasn't good. Say what we would about Mrs. Maggrumph, and in private we said a lot, she was a clever adversary, and of course she had that superpower of being an adult, and thus automatically believed by other adults.
Today's lesson is going to be maths,
continued Mrs. Maggrumph, correcting herself.
I've prepared for you lots of graphs.
She smiled to herself as she pointed to Archulus.
You wills,
she said.
What is the square root of 9,695?
remember,
mouthed Bettina from the side of all three heads.
that's stupid.
But Archulus couldn't help himself.
836.
He shot back automatically.
And how about 98,526 multiplied by 52,489? She asked.
5171531214.
He blinked.
Fact.
He added for good measure.
It's not just numbers either,
continued Mrs. Maggrumph.
What letters do you get if you type 5317704 in a calculator? I got it upside down, she asked.
Hollies, like the band.
Archulus said straight away.
There we are,
Mrs. Maggrumph said more smarmily.
what a bright pupil. And you're such a talented class, all so talented and so useful. You've all learned a half holiday. Now all of you children go out and play. I hope you didn't mind my banter earlier,
she said to the inspectors.
I find it keeps them on their toes. They're all such clever little students.
She whisked me off my feet as I walked past.
This one's so terribly good at prose. He writes in class all day and hardly ever takes a break. It's because he loves me so much. Look at all the notes he takes.
She shook my back, so all my papers came out in a totally jumbled order. So much so, I still haven't quite got them in the right order to rewrite out for you now. I might have got this next bit slightly wrong. And then he said, I love your Diplodocus. And I said, no, you, Emu. Gosh, that was a good sandwich at lunch. That Boris Johnson we studied in history is a complete big-headed twang. The story's in the journey, and not what's out to sea. One for one and one for all, except when the rich they have a ball, for they make outless of us all. Collawallaboola, Mr. Dobalina, Mr. Bob Dobalina, elephants, chickens, silge. Wait, no, that was from Robin's story on Robin Hood, and my essay on endurance, and Robin's essay on a favourite Earth dinosaur, and a debate on politics, and extracts from endurance and insurgents, and a discussion of my lunch from 8 days earlier I was meant to be keeping in a separate folder, and a random monkey's song lyric. Sorry, I'm in a right model. Where did my next sheet go? I have all these things in meticulous order usually. Ah, here it is. Please, miss, said Robin, thinking quickly, we would love to talk to the inspectors ourselves in private, to, tell them all about what we think of your class.
Oh, no,
Mrs. Maggrumph said in mock denial.
Your children, you don't want to worry your pretty little head with adult affairs. You go and have fun now and don't have a care.
She pointed to Robin.
Oh, look, your poor shoes have come undone again. Poor lassie. We can't have you hurting yourself now, can we? Doing something nasty.
said Mrs. Maggrumph, rubbing Robin's head as she bent down to tie them up.
What a dear,
she continued, patting Robin on the head.
Do you know, I think she's my favourite in the class. Such a peach. Humans are such fun to teach.
Defeated, Robin opened her mouth to protest, but could think of nothing, so she came and joined the rest of us outside. Mrs. Maggrumph shut the door as firmly, yet politely, as she could, and pulled down the blinds. "Phew," said Lando. "It's a good job none of us believe anything Mrs. Maggrumph says about us anymore. She could have scarred us for life with those reports. They ban them on my homeworld. I think it's wicked to have all our character traits listed like that, as if they're faults that need to be fixed, as if we're all faulty cars, or shuttles, or galumphries with a flat tyre. All character traits are positive if you look at them the other way round. The shy creatures are polite and responsible, the more assertive of us are confident, that's all."
Exactly,
said Elfrida, nodding.
Adults seem to forget that they are works in progress just as much as we are. We never get to write report cards about them, though.
"Who does she think she's kidding, Mo?" asked Robin. "We all know who we are, and there are no parents to shame by sending those reports."
Yeah,
laughed Hermione a little too loudly.
what a pack of lies. Everything she said, none of it true.
"Thank goodness we've all learned to be as thick-skinned as a Clandusprod, or as egotistical as a Belobrat," said Lando. "Well, those things might really have hurt." Bettina looked white-faced.
I'm going to sit down,
she said.
If nobody else minds, and that's okay with everyone.
She added quickly.
To be honest,
said Elfrida,
I'm rather proud of being a loner, though I see it as following my own path regardless of how other people feel about me. So I've turned Mrs. M's insult on their head and make them something to be proud about.
She may even have had a point about my blown fuses,
said Archness.
But one I can't help much, so I don't care.
She's already handed out her worst to me, said Robin. I was rather expecting it, to be honest.
She doesn't scare me anymore,
squeaked Jake.
Psychologically, she was only doing it to make us turn on each other,
added Elfrida.
And obviously through tactic. Well, she can't do that. We believe in each other too much to argue, because she's created such a low opinion in ourselves.
Oh, Archie, how could you?
Exploded Bettina.
We were supposed to look stupid, not gifted. I can't believe you gave the game away just because that wretch of a Maggrumph fed you a mathematical sum. You might be the brightest one here by far, but you're so thick sometimes. And Elfrida was doing so well.
I'm sorry.
Archie said in a mournful voice.
Really I am. I just can't help myself. It's automatic when someone asks me to do something with numbers. It's like when you're given something to read. You can't help but take in what it says.
Maybe,
said Bettina.
You didn't have to read it out loud. Fact.
I didn't mean it,
said Archie sadly.
Double fact.
Fair, said Lando, patting him on the arm, and being most surprised when it became detached. Hastily it was fixed back on. You couldn't help it. That Maggrumph is too clever by half.
Too clever by at least 9 tenths,
agreed Archers, nodding. What is it with you and numbers, anyway? Asked Robin, who had never spent time with a Mekkion before. You didn't seem to enjoy the creative lessons at all, but you really love maths and science, I notice. He said.
Art subjects scare me. They're so vague and open-ended. There are no wrong answers. I love dealing with numbers where you're either right or wrong. It's so comforting. Unquestionable logic that can always be relied upon is like a lifeboat in a universe where the most unexpected and random things keep occurring. Numbers help keep me safe and give me something to hold on to when there is nothing else.
He sighed.
Well, I really need them now, more than ever too. Fuck.
I understand, I croaked, my vocal cords still rusty. I'm the same way with words. It's my way of gaining control.
I sort of understand,
said Elfrida.
But I love the idea of never being wrong. Give me arts and humanities every day, where everything can be argued for or against, and nobody will ever know for certain. You can only be judged compared to what everyone else in class did. That's freedom for me. Numbers are too restricting.
Arts are too vague,
said Archers.
Give me the discipline of numbers any day,
said Hermione.
Well, I think you're all weird. What you three need is to be less nerdy and more like a child. I want to rummage through my collection of practical jokes. I have some truly great ones.
I'm a geek,
said Elfrida crossly.
I have a passionate social life discussing things I love, and who is more passionate over something than a Mrasianart? Archulus is vanilla. There's a difference.
I'm proud to be,
said the Mekkion absently, jotting down the numbers of the shuttles in his spotter's guide to spaceships.
Give me figures and logic over species interaction any day. What's the point of being weird if weird involves other people?
Well,
countered Elfrida.
The meek might inherit the earth, but the geek shall inherit the universe.
What with those wings?
Hermione laughed.
The fact that you're both debating the difference between geeks and nerds right now only tells me what geeks and nerds you both are.
Lando continued. I don't seem to have the sort of body or mind that works quickly. But then Clandusprods aren't meant to make the most of their abilities individually. It's by working together as a team we shine. You might notice that we only enter all the team sports of the Olympics, not the individual events.
Huh.
Snorted Bettina.
It's not about what body or mind you are gifted with, but what you do with both of them that counts.
She's saying that because she wasn't blessed with much in either, too,
whispered Hermione, and Robin laughed.
Well then,
Glared Bettina, flouncing off.
I know when I'm not wanted. You'll just have to put up with reading about my famous exploits in International Geographic then, won't you? I'm going to become a famous explorer one day and conquer new planets that will all be named after me, and I don't need to be brainy or brawny or even have friends at that. I just need to be the best.
I bet you she's eaten by a rogue algebra the minute she steps forward the first one,
whispered Hermione to General Giggles.
Let's just hope none of those alien planets have a slight slope. I know how much you hate heights.
I should ignore that comment, and if he, or she, does eat me, I'll be the best damn meal he's ever had,
boasted Bettina.
Who needs friends anyway? I have more intelligent conversations talking to myself.
The middlehead turned to the others.
Is about right, Bettina? Yes, absolutely, Bettina. You're the best, Bettina. See?
She said, glaring at us all.
You say it's the first sign of madness, talking to yourself,
muttered Hermione.
And a second when you start talking back.
All right, said Lando, trying to calm things down. Let's not waste our time worrying anymore. Let's do something for when the inspectors come out.
Thank you so much for coming,
said Mrs. Maggrumph as the inspectors left her class.
Sorry about my pupils, they really are so kind. They'll do anything to get out of the tests. I hope you aren't all too upset. It shows initiative after all, and though I'm sorry it cost you so dearly, we'd love to see the little rascals thinking so freely.
Please,
shouted Elfrida,
don't listen to her. She's up to something. We all are here.
Go and ask the free headmaster what's really going on,
shouted Bettina.
What about the laboratory equipment? What's not normal for a school building? Fact,
added Archibald. Just test for red weed in the laboratory, cried Robin, please.
Plus, where are all the other children?
asked Hermione.
Why is there a school this big for just 11 of us? What are the mechanical sounds in the rest of the building? And why are we trapped in here?
And just look what they've done to poor Squash, added Lando, showing off a photograph we'd taken yesterday of him blowing kisses at the camera. Agrosian shouldn't be like that. He's ill.
The food really isn't very nice. I've done something to it,
said XXXX.
The creatures are all scary. They frighten us,
said Jake.
Colin's made notes of everything that's happened,
said Bettina, reaching a hand into my bag and thrusting out a load of papers at random.
Camalosians never lie. Read them all, please.
The inspectors looked cross.
I'll have that, thank you,
said BMB, snatching up XXX's mid-morning service station snack.
To think we came all the way out here on a wasted journey for a schoolboy and girl prank. I recommend nothing but a programme of bread and water on the food replicators for a week.
Poor XXX fainted, right on top of me, even though I was only pretending to be Squash.
Good impression, Colin,
hissed Bettina, pleased. I didn't have the heart to tell her it was an accident.
Please,
said Elfrida desperately.
You have to believe us. Why would we go to all this trouble just for a prank? We're serious. Something is very, very wrong. You must have noticed for yourselves that this isn't like other schools. You don't have any official record of it for a start, do you?
Cy and Borg added up the numbers on their clipboard and spoke as one.
It is true that there are some curious things to be found in this school, and we can agree that this school has been late registering with us, but we've added up the numbers, and while you are down on food, bathroom facilities, leadership, management, quality of education, budget, environment, habitation, curriculum, staff, and health, you have an exceptional cloakroom, so that's giving you a zillion points automatically. Sorry, if you get enough points, we don't need to inspect you anymore. You're okay on resources too.
Nonsense,
said Bettina.
We ain't got nothing.
Seems such grammar, as if someone hit it with a hammer. We give so much, but it is all wasted on you,
sniffed Mrs. Maggrumph.
You're every waking minute. If someone gave you a bathtub, you'd probably keep trading cards in it.
But what about the red weed?
cried Bettina.
We don't have a section for enabling illegal substances being grown on school property,
said Scienborg,
so it's outside our jurisdiction. Sorry.
I hear it's very soothing.
said A.
Maybe you should try it.
Mrs. Maggrumph smiled evilly.
They're all right, Rob Scullions, and this is more than their usual blip. I shall see they are punished by banning them from their school trip.
Oh,
said Hortense.
a school trip? Where to?
Decreeta,
said Mrs. Maggrumph.
to be at the Galactic Peace Museum. How I would love to be them, but now I have to stay here and be eaten. No, I meant beaten. Whoops, no, I mean I'll have to have a PTA meeting. Whew. Planetary Teaching Academy,
she explained.
I hope my colleagues aren't mad at me, but when we were all young once upon a time, you just leave them in the capable hands of mine. I'll soon make them sorry for what they did. In fact, I'm about to flip my lid, flipping kids.
A trip?
said Hortense.
How smashing. That's exactly what these children need. Outside stimulation. They've clearly been locked up indoors for far too long. As it happens, we're heading to Decreeta on our way home. We'll be very glad to give you a lift.
Mrs. Maggrumph' face was a picture, as her face turned lots of different colours, as she tried to think of something to say. Oh, would you? said Robin over-enthusiastically. We would be in your debt for multiple lifetimes. Our old school shuttle's playing up and doesn't do many miles to the gallon, and it would save a lot on the school budget.
But,
said the teacher.
surely we would all be too much. We wouldn't want to make the traction too rough. That Doosbury child alone is quite a weight. You might have to register us as excess freight.
Poor XXXX looked down at his tummy and frowned.
Nonsense,
said B&B, who had clearly gone back to taking quite a shine to XXXX again now all the fuss had died down.
He's terribly thin. He needs feeding up, and we've plenty of room. Good, that's settled then. Go and get your things, children. We leave right now.
Mrs. Maggrumph walked with us to the door before she turned and snarled. I don't know how, she said, but if this was a lottery and I was a better, I'd also blame you lot for that school inspector. But they all said they thought I was ace, so you'd better get used to seeing this pretty face. You're stuck with my divine interventions, and next week, when we're back here again, you'll all be at permanent detention. Even so, we had other plans, so we all ran off happily, leaving her glowering in the doorway.
Hey,
said Bettina.
Hadn't we better say goodbye to Mr. C? You know, if we decide to, say goodbye more permanently. He's been pretty decent to us, sort of.
I'll go get him, said Margolo, borrowing her mother's keys. In the meantime we got ready, stuffing everything we could fit into our bags. I crammed my rucksack full of all my notes and my remaining empty pages, and I thought I would travel light by taking just my favourite 97 pencils. Around me everyone was a hive of activity, doing similar things, and taking everything valuable with them.
This is all happening so fast,
said Ursula, sobbing and briefly lighting up from a blown gasket.
My routine. How can I cope on the trip? What will I do? When will I do it? When will I stop doing it? Do I have enough emotional fuses? I think I'm just so second in another one with stress.
Has anyone seen Blotchy?
asked Bettina, worried. He came running in at just that moment.
Oh, phew. Here, boy, have some treats and keep quiet,
she said, and stuffed him inside one of XXX's large bags, taking his food out first.
Hey,
said XXXX.
that was my snack for the journey.
Bettina pointed to the other bags piled up by the door.
What are they then?
My other snacks for the journey.
Blistering Belobrat barnacles,
Bettina explained.
Didn't you hear an inspector say she wanted to feed you up? Just think of the food replicators on the shuttle and how good they must be. You don't want to carry any of this red weed contaminated stuff with you, do you?
XXXX pulled a face.
Well, maybe just one bag,
he asked.
Fine,
sighed Bettina.
But keep Blotchy and the other one.
She leaned over to her pet.
Now be a good boy, won't you?
She said.
Don't bark unless you have to, and stay as quiet as a Mrasianart mouse. In slippers.
Okay, said Blotchy, saluting with his tail. I will do my best. Wait, said Robin. Did Blotchy just say his first full sentence? But nobody was listening to her, so, shrugging, she went back to packing a bag. Soon we were all ready, and taking one last look round to see if we'd forgotten anything.
I don't believe it,
said Hermione.
When I first came here, I hated this place, would have done anything to get away from it. But now that it's time to leave, I feel rather sad to say goodbye.
Somehow I agreed with her.
I'm really going to miss you most of all,
she said, hugging the TV and sobbing as she left. It's the people that make the memories, said Lando, not the places, and we're all going together, apart from poor Squash. So don't be sad. We get to make many, many more memories yet. It was his usual optimistic self. Even so, the mention of Squash had made us all sad again.
Remember,
said Bettina to me,
from now on you spend half your life as Colin, the other half as Squash. It all depends on your acting, Colin, so don't let up your disguise for a second.
She paused, apparently remembering the marks about bossiness on her school report.
If that's okay with you.
I nodded back to her, my improvised wig coming off. I do hope Squash is all right, said Robin.
Sure to be,
said Elfrida.
That doctor seemed really nice. He's probably safer than we are right now.
I never said,
added Bettina.
Well done, Elfrida. You did brilliantly before. I truly couldn't have done any better myself.
Elfrida blushed.
Really? Coming from a Belobrat, that's high praise indeed.
Children, said Mr. C, walking through the door, I just heard. Congratulations. I'm so relieved. Pleased that you'll be gone from here tomorrow.
He sliced up and down, as if seeing through us.
I know you'll survive. Thrive away from here.
You too, sir,
said Bettina.
Keep our homework on ice for us.
I don't suppose with all this fuss you've all got your homework assignments done, have you? He asked. You see, I need them for, admin.
We all nodded, even Robin. I just finished mine last night, she said. It might be a bit long, she said doubtfully. Something she took back when she saw the amount of papers I was handing over. Wow, said Mr. C, glancing through all the papers. And your self-portraits too. Excellent. Thank you, class. Dismissed. One last time. Until we meet again, good luck. He had a definite sob in his voice when he said it, but took us by surprise. We held his gaze, not sure what to say. Did he know what we'd been planning? We went to hug him in turn, particularly Lando, before time ticked away and we reluctantly pulled ourselves away as the teacher headed for the staff room.
Take care, sir,
said Bettina, still not sure how much to trust him.
Don't do anything we wouldn't do.
She fixed him with a stare. The rest of us murmured our assent. Mrs. Maggrumph stuck her head round the door. Everybody ready? Asked Lando. All right, just time for one last group hug. Remember, whatever happens from now on, we're Class 5C and our bonds are unbreakable. One by one we went round the circle, putting our arms, hooves, wings, flippers and robotic limbs out. Then we all embraced each other and hugged.
To the future,
said Bettina.
Let's hope it tastes of freedom and not red weed.
Mrs. Maggrumph turned up just then, a sneer back in place on her face.
Right then, class, it's boarding time. Anyone who isn't ready will just be left behind. I don't know how you will manage to pass, but it looks as if I shall have to take the whole class.
She counted us on, one by one, through the door of the great hall and into the corridor. XXXX helped me to climb back through the ventilation shaft and out again, my disguise removed and stuffed in my pocket, so that I had been counted twice as two different people. Robin was at the back with me, the real me. I can't believe we're really leaving the hall behind, she said. I know we've only been here 5 days, but it really felt like home. I squeezed her hand. At least we're still together, aren't we? All of us. It's not like when I came here the first time, and I was all alone, she said gratefully, and I smiled up at her. And I'm never letting go, I mouthed back to her.
Now then,
said Mrs. Maggrumph,
most of you won't have been down this corridor any time before. Please, no speaking. Definitely no peeking.
We passed the free headmaster's office, and through the crack in the door we saw a figure hunched up with an overcoat over his 6 eyes. We waited for Jake to catch up with us, panting as he was under the weight of all his belongings, particularly all of his pillows. Once we got to the door, Mrs. Maggrumph stopped and scratched her head.
Why are you all taking so much stuff? Isn't a trip to a new planet entertainment enough?
We're worried about robbers,
said Bettina with feeling, not wanting to tell her that she also knew she was never coming back here for her other things.
Robbers?
said Mrs. Maggrumph.
What with all your clobber? There will still be people here, you know, and you'll be back before long. Anyway, who would want to steal your belongings?
That's what I'm afraid of,
muttered Bettina, giving Jake a helping hand before adding,
robbers, bandits, thieves, rapscallions, rogues, people doing things they shouldn't do. You never know who might be paying visits on strange alien planets like this.
Mrs. Maggrumph shrugged.
It's your health. Choose yourself.
Robin caught the top of a rucksack on the top of a door frame as she walked down the corridor, causing her to be knocked violently backwards and drop all her belongings. Some of them on Mrs. Maggrump's foot. Sorry, the human said, as we all bent down to help her.
Do you mind?
Replied the teacher, afraid of losing her temper the way she usually would, with the inspectors listening in.
Now, be more careful, or we'll leave you behind. I mean, never mind, clumsy. You come here and take a hug from Mumsy.
This time we all helped Robin scoop them up. Luckily there weren't many things. Finally we were all outside and climbing on board the shuttle, each of us peering back to have one last lingering look at the school as we did so, and commenting on the odd red patch of ground we had just walked through, as if it had been stained with red jam. I also knew too that everyone was remembering what it had been like when we had arrived here, all alone, knowing no one, but with high hopes of what the school might have been like. Pretty much the opposite to what we were feeling now, when we had such low hopes, but we were all at least together. Because that's what I was remembering too.
Don't worry, class,
beamed A, getting into the driver's seat.
You'll be back on Orpheus before you know it. School trips always get past far too quickly.
But somehow we all knew in our heart of hearts that it just wasn't true. I was last inside the shuttle, nestling myself in a square of seats at the back, next to Robin, and squashed next to XXXX on the other side of me. Elfrida, Bettina and Margalo were sat opposite us, with Jake and Lando to our left, and Hermione and Archelaus off to our right. So far no one had noticed the empty seat where Squash should have been. Mrs. Maggrumph was carelessly flinging our belongings into the middle of the shuttle with quite a bump. I could hear Blotchy whining slightly, but what with the hum of the engines, the teacher hadn't seemed to notice. What a good boy, managing to stay quiet through all that. Next, Mrs. Maggrumph was tugging at all our safety harnesses, retightening them to make sure they were tighter than was comfortable.
Can't be too careful in outer space,
she said loud enough for the inspectors to hear.
We can't have those G-forces move these poor children out of place.
Madam,
said Archelaus,
this shuttle is a ZXL 5-634F4FFF649-J. There will be no G-forces affecting any of us inside.
Mrs. Maggrumph ignored him. Next, Archelaus strained to reach for his pocket before remembering his arms were tied, and he used his voice activation instead.
Please go to my little Mekkion Spotter's Guide to Shuttles,
he said,
and tick off the ZXL 5-634F4FFF649-J.
The document came to life and made a satisfying little ding.
Ooh,
said the Mekkion.
Another 10 points.
What's going on? asked Lando, confused.
My Spotter's Guide,
said Archelaus.
I tick off every shuttle I see from around the universe in it.
Why?
asked Hermione, confused.
Don't you get bored enough in lessons?
Archie shrugged his shoulders.
It's a Mekkion thing,
he said. How many do you have? asked Robin.
9 points,
said Archelaus.
I've only ever seen 2 shuttles. One was the one I arrived on Orpheus from, the ABQ1-75896GGG495867-4-B. That was only worth 1 point.
Well done dropping that book on Molly Maggrumpha's foot earlier, Penguin,
laughed Hermione.
What a great prank.
Oh, said Robin. Actually, that was an accident.
Ah, brilliant,
said Hermione.
You even sound as if you meant it just then.
No, really?
Look, we're taking off. Oh,
she said as the engines died out.
What do I know? I guess I'm wrong again.
She muttered to herself.
No wonder no one likes me. Such a burden of responsibility.
She looked quite ill with worry.
Are we there yet?
Exploded Hermione.
I'm bored already.
Hardly. Even in the best shuttle like this one, Decreeta is a 15-hour flight away,
said Archelaus.
Oh,
said Hermione.
Are 15 hours up yet? This journey's been going on forever.
There's 14 hours, 57 minutes and 32 seconds to go,
replied Archelaus.
They start the engines this time.
Bettina suddenly cheered up.
I know,
she said.
Let's really wind Mrs. Maggrumph up. If we can do it for the journey, she's sure to reveal who she is in front of those inspectors.
We all grinned.
Miss,
called Hermione.
are we there yet?
Yes, I've eaten all my sandwiches.
said XXXX.
Any chance we could stop somewhere for lunch?
Asked Jake, who had rolled himself up into a ball. Mrs. Maggrumph was pretending to ignore us, and carried on her idle chit-chat about the weather and bee-roads in the front seat. Drunk on the feeling of impending freedom, Bettina started singing, getting the class to join her in a chant.
The wheels on the shuttle go round and round, round and round, round and round.
The food replicator machines go psh.
Said Jake.
The carbon pistons in the titanium Mekkion engines, powered by element 115, causing a chemical explosion inside the cylinder tank, go
Added Archelaus, joining in.
I can't remember all that.
Said Bettina.
All right, let's start another song. Why are we waiting? We are suffocating. Oh, why are we waiting?
Archelaus took up the song.
The shuttle's full of copper plating, with a 2256 carbon dating. Oh, why are we awaiting?
Elfrida was next.
Who is Mrs. Maggrumph dating? Soon they will be mating. Oh, why are we waiting?
Hermione joined in.
She's exfoliating to get a higher Tinder rating. Oh, why are we waiting?
Robin had just started her verse. Is she bear baiting? What evil scheme is she creating? When Mrs. Maggrumph finally heard everyone, snarled and turned her head to us, whispering so only we could hear, or so she thought, given the concerned glances the inspectors gave her.
I might be in charge of you all, but don't think you'll find me caring. Personally, I find your whole class overbearing. Over there are your seats. Over there is a clock. You won't be getting any supper. The next person to talk, without being asked, will be sent headfirst out the airlock. I don't think any of you will be in this place. I can just say you got lost, and ended up floating out in space. If you need something to occupy you, then think about your homework in silence. Or just sit back and enjoy your shuttle confinement.
Just then, the engines finally started up.
Did you hear any of that, anyone?
Asked Bettina with mock astonishment.
Something about homework?
Winked Elfrida.
But I couldn't quite catch it.
Nope, Sir Robin. I didn't hear a thing.
In space, no one can hear you scream,
Whispered Hermione in the same voice Mrs. Maggrumph had just used.
and you can't hear them order you to do your homework either.
I feel a bit sick.
Said XXXX quietly. Robin and I, who were sitting next to him, looked alarmed.
Maybe I should stop eating.
He asked out loud, before taking another bite. Wordlessly, we all strained to look out the window.
Hey,
Said Bettina.
do you see that? The part of the school we're not in is all red-coloured and seems to be using. What do you think it is?
The others all peered out.
The weeping metaphorical blood of our suffering, perhaps.
Asked Elfrida.
The building of the school disturbed the topsoil, and that which is underneath is actually red.
Mused Archelaus.
One of the food replicator machines has gone faulty and it's really tomato ketchup.
Inquired XXXX.
Whatever it is, it's weird.
Said Bettina.
And that all rather proves it. We must be the only pupils here. But why were we all squashed down one end of the school, when that's the whole point of the building? And what is that huge satellite dish sticking out the side? I've forgotten about that.
None of us could answer her questions, so we all just looked at one another and shrugged. The questions still unanswered, the school disappeared, then the country, then the planet, then the solar system, to be replaced by blacking darkness, followed gradually by tiny pinpricks of light everywhere we looked, bright enough to light up the inside of a cabin. It twinkled and danced around us, as if touching our immortal souls with its presence, like the universe was telling us that we were all going to be okay, that even in a scary world, fate would keep us safe and protect us all. It was an emotional, life-changing experience for us all, as we had not been able to pay enough attention to space in our previous flights, and I knew none of us had been able to afford any private space travel of our own, except Margalo, and Magrumps didn't tend to travel far. All around us, the cosmic symphonies of space and time danced away. Well, this beat being stuck inside a tiny room, staring at a tiny teacher's tiny handwriting on a tiny roulette board any day. This was a journey into the infinite, life beyond our tiny walls, that gave us the feeling the universe was endlessly great and wide, and that in it we could go anywhere and do anything. I looked around my classmates, hoping that they were enjoying this bonding ritual as much as me. Said Jake, doing his best to hide under his seat, and when that didn't work, finding that it helped putting his paws over his eyes.
I don't like being inside moving objects full of lights and shadows while the weight of infinite time and space stretches out beyond us, revealing just what a sport player in the cosmic fate I really am.
There, said Lando, patting him with his tail, the only part of him still accessible. It will be fine, Jake. Just close your eyes and imagine you're, I don't know, in a lovely field. Squeaked Jake.
Oh no, Carol, scary.
Okay, said Lando quickly. A park? Ducks, he said.
Scary.
Your communal table garden?
Insects.
He said.
Very scary.
Fine, sighed Lando. You're fast asleep in bed on Orpheus and surrounded by all of us.
Oh good,
said Jake.
Wait, scary.
What happened? Asked Robin with concern.
Bad dream.
Glabdiharbit squeaked.
I dreamt I was in a shuttle, taking off to the stars. Maybe I should open my eyes so I can see what I'm saying.
He opened them wide.
Oh dear.
He squeaked.
Oh dear.
As we're all captives here for a bit,
said Bettina.
I'd love to hear everyone's opinions. What did you all make of the free headmaster when we crept past the door? I'm sure I've seen him somewhere before. I just can't think where.
I know,
said Elfrida. Picture him in your mind's eye, suggested Robin. Maybe you can think of the context then.
I already told you the other day,
said Elfrida.
Why does no one ever listen to me?
Good idea, Robin,
said Bettina.
Think heads. This is a free noggin remembering job.
All six eyes tightened themselves shut while she thought, before opening again suddenly.
Was I just talking to myself the other day or something?
Complained Elfrida.
Stop squeaking and let me think. I've got it. A trading card, I think. I remember something about it getting 812 points for narcissism, which is high even for a Belobrat. See, he's an athlete,
asked Hermione.
He didn't look like an athlete.
Of course he's not an athlete,
fumed Elfrida.
Not now,
said Bettina, puzzled.
Odd though. I know every Belobrat card in my athletic sticker book backwards. So what else could he be?
I told you,
sighed Elfrida. Well, said Lando, the only other cards you've seen are in Elfrida's Vicar Book of Politicians. I doubt he's in there.
But,
spluttered Elfrida. Hermione laughed.
Oh, that old thing. Let me guess. He's on the page of white male aliens in suits and a dodgy haircut smiling and trying to look important, which could be any page in the book. Good luck recognising him.
Yes,
said Elfrida.
Don't you remember me telling you? He looks like the Environment Minister for Hemisphere.
Wait a minute,
said Bettina suddenly.
He was on that page, but all those environmental do-gooders. Dropouts or something. Brilliant. I knew I'd get it. I'm great at remembering stuff, me. I'm surprised you didn't mention it, Elfrida. What's dropout stand for, anyway?
Cop out,
said Elfrida, beaten.
A coalition of pollutant observers in the universe together. It's a conference between environmental experts and the intergalactic president. They meet about every few months to discuss climate change and how to protect endangered species. Although I don't know why we bother, really. Since the Mekkions gave us all technology, no plant or animal has ever gone extinct or even been endangered. As far as I know, all they do is discuss whether algebras count as sentient beings enough to vote for them yet, or something like that.
Weird, said Hermione.
Why bother discussing that?
I don't know,
shrugged Elfrida.
Adult stuff.
Well, said Robin with a shudder, there's an old folk story in my family, passed down by my great-great-grandparents, about how awful it was on Earth, just before we made interstellar contact, and the Mekkions helped us. Our planet was in a terrible shape. We didn't have enough food for the population, our industries were polluting the atmosphere badly, the warmer climate was creating so many new infectious diseases, and so many creatures died out and went extinct. She looked sad. I wish I'd had a pet dodo growing up, or even a pet penguin. Both are long gone now. We badly needed a few environmental conferences, but nobody did anything, so it's as well they still exist, even if they don't actually do anything.
Oh, I don't know,
grinned Bettina.
There's still one penguin in the universe, and I'm looking at her right now.
Robin smiled.
You don't mind being called Penguin, do you, Penguin?
Asked Bettina suddenly.
I don't mean anything by it. I wasn't bullying you or making you feel inferior. It's just banter I thought was funny at first. And now I've come to think of you that way for so long now, it's hard to think of you as anything else. And you do walk like a penguin.
Robin grinned. I don't mind. Bettina looked relieved. 6 eyes? Robin giggled. Bettina laughed.
You're right, here he is,
said Elfrida, as Archelaus's extendable arms got her cards out of her rucksack.
I'm sure that's the same Belobrat.
We do have very distinctive features,
agreed Bettina.
You know, I think you might be right. Well spotted, Elfrida, but doesn't Doosbury Giant's driving a dinghy? Why is he working at our school if he's Environment Minister?
It says here he used to be a scientist, said Robin. Perhaps he's something to do with the red weed. Look, said Elfrida.
He's on the page of ministers for the Cop-Out Environmental Conference, right? Well, isn't that taking place on Decreeta this weekend, at the same time as the Olympics? Perhaps he's going to make a final report on something, whatever it is. But then why isn't he here with us?
So what's going on?
asked Elfrida after a pause, who finally said what we were all thinking, but none of us had wanted to say.
Government ministers running our school, signs of contamination by red weed around the building and around us that appear to come from the food replicator machines. Strange dreams about being sedated and measured. Those strange notes on the wall. Poor Squash. I hope he's safe now and feeling better.
We all instinctively looked back to where our shuttle had taken off.
Logically, you should be in a safer position than us,
said Archelaus.
I mean, he's with professionals who are there to look after him and make him well again, and Dr. Houston seemed like an adult to trust. Us, though, we're stuck with a potential serial killer.
Said XXXX.
Serial killer? I could just murder a box of gluten-free Rice Krispies myself right now.
So how do we lose our dampness then?
asked Archelaus, ignoring the Doosbury Giant.
No offence,
he said quickly to Margalo, who was looking silent and sad. It was uncharacteristically quiet. I'm sorry, said Lando as reassuring as he could, all trussed up in a shuttle hurtling through unknown skies at a quadrillion miles an hour. I know this is a much bigger break for you than the rest of us, Margalo, as you've got people to leave behind, not like the rest of us. You're safer with us, though. Really you are. Margalo looked up.
I still can't believe it,
she said, suddenly releasing so much like a cork in a bottle and using the roar of the engines to cover up her words.
I don't know where it went wrong. We used to get on so well, my parents and me. There was a time when I looked into their eyes and saw so much love and affection. But I couldn't seem to do anything to please them anymore. The best smiles were dismissed, the most brilliant of ideas were ignored. They were still exactly the same to everyone else. It was only towards me that behaviour changed. I thought I must have done something awful to have lost that love that was there, but I didn't know why I'd lost it, so I just kept doing everything I'd already been doing, but more so, over and over again. I became the best, the fastest, the smartest, the strongest. Even if that meant I had to cheat and lie my way to be that. After all, it never seemed to care. In time I liked being thought of as the best at something, almost feared. Getting the respect of my peers mattered so much more when I didn't have them back home. The worst of it, though, is that I had to stay there looking into the same dead eyes that only pretend to care about you in front of everyone else. It's still there sometimes, that affection, that look in their eyes. Just enough to remind me of what used to be, back when things were better between us. Between us. I just don't understand what made them turn that look into one of disgust, and what stopped them loving as long or as often. I mean, what did I do? I'm only 10. You shouldn't have enemies at 10, never mind people close to you. Bloody adult,
said Bettina, and we all nodded.
You swore,
said Lando, shocked.
That language is scary,
said Jake, rolling up into a ball.
Yeah,
said Bettina.
Well, they made me.
You're one of us now, said Lando. It will be better. Promise. Margalo let out a slow, sad smile, but then went back to her inner thoughts.
I don't think you did anything wrong,
said Elfrina to Margalo.
Sometimes with adults, things are going on in their minds they don't tell us about, but worry and gnaw away at them until they explode at the very people they think they're trying to protect. As aliens we all are to each other. Truly adults are the most alien species in space. I have a theory that their brains get smaller with age, or their bodies get bigger. It's the only explanation.
Not one borne out by physical science, I'm afraid,
said Archelaus.
but my observations would tally with yours on a hypothetical plane. So for once I would say, fact.
It's not fair,
continued Bettina stubbornly.
It's not just Mrs. Maggrumph. It was like that at my old school too. They give marks based on how bright we are, and if we're not bright, then that's because they don't teach us properly. Now, if they gave marks for effort, nobody thought harder about how to get out of lessons than us. It stands to reason we should give marks for ingenuity and avoiding work. After all, isn't that what every adult does, from our teachers down? Work out how to take the easiest route? I don't understand why they even keep us in class if they don't want us. Why don't they just let us quit the school?
Well, said Margolo, it's a legal requirement. Even the galactic law says we have to go to school. I know Mrs. Maggrumph signed every legal document as our guardians, as well as your teachers. Do you know what could happen if we aren't in school? They could go to prison. They'd probably be sent to the prison by incarcerate. Well, boo-hoo-hoo, said Hermione sarcastically. I get out my little violin, but it's so small, even Jake can't see it.
Said the Glabdiharbit.
Random orchestral string instruments are scary.
He put his paws over his eyes.
Especially Clementi.
So basically children are made to toe the line for the good of adults?
Asked Hermione.
Yeah, great. That makes sense. I mean, what's in it for us?
Protections.
Squeaked Jake.
Being without adults is scary.
Pretty scary with them too, if you ask me,
said Hermione.
Children are the last part of society to be prejudiced against,
said Elfrida.
Really? I mean, here we are in 2372. Men and women's rights are about equal. Species are all represented on the Peace Council. Transgender and hybrid species are commonplace. Old age pensioners are all taken care of. What have we got? More blooming homework than ever.
That's another point,
said Bettina.
Adults always seem to think that children resent gaining knowledge, but we don't. Most children I know are eager to learn, but only about things that interest us. We don't need to learn about adult stuff until we're an actual adult. Also, we get into trouble for asking questions about how things work. But how are we supposed to learn about how our universe works unless we ask questions?
The way the education system is run is completely and utterly illogical, tailored to lists of dates and isolated bits of learning, instead of an integrated, holistic system where we learn about how the universe works as a great mass, including all the species who live on it,
said Archulus.
Fact. Why do adults of all species fail to understand that there are more important things in life than writing essays, and book reports, and sports days, and exams? It's not as if they're useful to you in later life. I won't remember a thing about them in 20 years, whereas I will remember the days when snow stopped school and we spent it running around playing tag, or the day we broke up for summer and we destroyed our school uniform rolling down the hill, because we could. Logically, we're never going to use any of this information past the basics. Education is just a babysitting service, so our families can go out to work.
But it's worse for us, because our families are dead and can't work, said Robin.
I never understood why school has to be a one-size-fits-all establishment either,
argued Elfrida.
I mean, look at us. We come in all shapes and sizes and abilities, and yet we're all measured by the same values that only matter to the teachers and inspectors.
Same here,
said Bettina.
If I were to go back to my home, the only things I'd be interested in are can I do public speaking? At least in my humble opinion.
Plus adults never make any sense, exploded Robin. They'll tell us to grow up, to start thinking for ourselves, to become more independent, and then moan at us. Oh, we didn't mean independent in that way. If you ask me, all adults are like aliens with their own philosophy, whatever alien race they're actually from. There is such pressure to grow up, yet every adult I've ever met is miserable. Why would anyone want that? She paused as 11 heads, 8 of ours, plus all 3 of Bettina's, nodded in agreement. Margolo was nodding.
There are too many rules in too many schools. What do we take us for, fools?
Yet every single one expects us to toe the line,
said Bettina.
Just because we're younger. What's so great about getting old anyway?
You could eat midnight snacks straight from the fridge and not sneak around,
said XXXX.
Well, there is that,
said Bettina.
They could sleep in the afternoon and call it a power nap,
said Hermione.
Imagine if we did that during the school day post-kindergarten.
They can make up rules that are illogical, and no one ever questions them about it,
said Archulus.
They do the same boring routines that stunt their imagination and growth,
said Elfrida.
You don't have to be scared of bullies,
said Jake.
when you're as tall as they are.
I think bullies just act differently when you grow older, said Lando. They don't beat you up anymore or steal your lunch money, but they still turn up at school fetes and outside school gates and sniff, or write long letters to the papers about the state of your backyard, or they get promotion instead of you at work, or fine you for being late, or rob you with a fountain pen.
There you are then,
said Bettina.
It's all the same deep down. It stands to reason. Adults are just the same as us, really. They're not different at all. They're just more experienced kids. So why do they have to act as if they're so alien?
You know, Robin continued, I feel silly saying this to anyone else, but maybe I can say it to all of you, as you seem to feel the same. I'm terrified of growing up, of becoming even more of a burden to everyone. For if I'm this hopeless as a child, what am I going to be like when I'm an adult? She let out a long sigh.
That's just adult scrophobia,
Elfrida said.
Fear of growing up, of the unknown. Every species has it, even if it takes different signs depending on the person.
You're bright, said Robin. You must have a theory, Elfrida. What makes the adults so different? But Mrasianart leaned across from a seat, conspiratorially.
I'm going to let you into a secret so terrifying that if you let it out, then it will make the entire universe as we know it come crashing down around your ankles. Or flippers, paws, hooves, I forget what you humans call them. From my close observation, the biggest secret adults keep from you is that they tell you that they know exactly what they're doing. They don't. They just want children to think that they do, so that they will never be questioned or look silly. It doesn't matter what species they're from, how well they talk the Belobrat walk of confidence, or say they're entirely logical like the Mekkions, or pretend they don't care like the Habridats. The truth is no one adult has ever properly worked out what life is for. The few that think they know have usually got it all wrong, and won't accept any alternatives to their point of view. Adults get fixated on plans for how life works, and stand by them even when the plan unravels, and people are miserable, or they die, or whatever. To be an adult is to be obstinate about how you see the world, and that you don't need to learn anything anymore. Once you realise that, and come to terms with it, then it's tremendously freeing, yet terrifying all at once. Basically, everybody's wrong. Their authority would be gone if you knew that's why they keep it from you, and that they were as in the dark about it all as we were, just less open about it all. I've yet to meet a single adult who really knew what they were doing, deep down.
I don't want to be like that when I'm an adult, shuddered Robin. I only want to help make this a better universe, not one with more rules. They all seem to become that, though, in the end, don't they?
Right then,
said Bettina.
Let's make it a pact now, just the 10 of us. No adults, ever again. They just can't be trusted. We survived by ourselves, the way we did on Orpheus. We'll just be doing it on a different planet, that's all.
She nodded at me.
You're very quiet. What say you, Colin?
The class laughed.
I mean, quiet even for you,
Bettina added. I wrote a note and handed it round. As a unit, we are collectively determined to pursue our course of actions, feeling that the hitherto threat is, when all motions are carried and considered, a minor penalty compared to the grievances that have yet to be addressed in perpetuity.
You said it,
added Bettina.
This universe was formed from a right to protest.
Starting with protests over supper,
said XXXX.
I take it Mrs. Maggrumph has forgotten to feed us, and somehow I don't fancy any more service food, even if we stop somewhere.
Good point,
said Bettina.
In all the mayhem, I always forgot we hadn't eaten.
I hadn't,
said XXXX. Archdius grinned.
Which rucksack has tonight's snacks inside it?
And when XXXX described it, the Mekkion voice activated a large extra arm that came out from his chest, above his safety belt, and picked up the bag, depositing it on XXX's lap.
I hope you got the right bag, XXX, or we'll be having warm blotches for supper. Now who wants what?
Soon we were all enjoying a nice meal when Hermione piped up.
You know that spare arm?
She asked Archie.
Could you direct it through to the front of a shuttle, do you think?
Yes,
said Archdius.
I suppose so. Do we want to?
Can you slap Mrs. Maggrumph round the back of the head?
Asked Hermione.
Just lightly, enough to annoy her. It would help us feel we got to run back a little bit before we go. Goodness knows we need some sort of a victory.
Oh yes, laughed Clando. Clandusprod closure, they call it on Ziggurat. Lando, said Robin, shocked. I'm surprised at you. The Clandusprod shrugged. Keeping you lot happy is as much my priority as keeping you safe. Plus she deserves it. I haven't forgotten that report she read out. Archelaus voice-directed instructions to the arm, which stretched round to Mrs. Maggrumph, delivered her a great smack round the antlers, and quickly pulled itself in again. The teacher looked behind her, in alarm. Hermione stifled a giggle. After the teacher turned round, Archelaus did it again. This time Hermione couldn't help herself and she laughed out loud. Mrs. Maggrumph turned red with rage, looked around again, and saw nothing there. Archie waited a few seconds, then did it again. Mrs. Maggrumph turned purple. Hermione laughed heartily. Archie waited for the longest time while the class breathed in, then tried it again. Mrs. Maggrumph got such a belt round the head she turned roulet and snorted, turning round angrily to find nothing there. Hermione was by now having hysterics and would have been rolling around on the floor of a shuttle if not for the safety belt. Everyone was laughing now, even Margalo.
That last one was for you,
whispered the Mekkion to her. By now Mrs. Maggrumph was turning round and glaring every few seconds, desperate to catch the perpetrator in the act. But Archie was patient and waited until the last possible moment when she wouldn't look round. Then whacked her again, which set off a tirade of abuse. The inspectors all looked most alarmed. Hermione laughed so hard we were all a little worried she was going to be sick and backed away. Mrs. Maggrumph seemed to be ready for the arm now and was slyly looking the way that it had come before. So Archelaus pulled it back in unseen. Then Elfrida dangled a karma machine off the end of it and let the Mekkion carry it halfway across the shuttle, just out of sight. It exploded in a violent sea of sparks and bangs when it caught sight of Mrs. Maggrumph, who clearly had a very guilty conscience indeed. It was a good job she'd been wearing her safety belt, or she would surely have been sucked into space, she jumped so far. She let off a howl of swear words of anger that would have made an Agrosian look bad. The inspectors began to back away from her as much as they could. By now, Hermione was apoplectic.
Oh dear,
she said between gasps for air.
That was the best prank ever. Thank you, Archie. I needed that.
We all did.
We sure did,
said Bettina.
We got the last laugh in the end. Even if Mrs. Maggrumph does work out who did it, she can't put any of us in detention again after we run away tomorrow. How great it's going to be. Freedom to do exactly what we want.
Oh no,
said Archelaus, mortified.
How horrible.
Not for you, old chap,
said Bettina quickly.
We'll give you as many cleaning rotas and timetables as you want. But for the rest of us, there'll be no school, no lesson bells, no homework, no detention, no teachers.
Yes, said Hermione.
We'll be free-range kids again, the way we were always born to be, not stuck in classroom cages.
She nestled back in her seat, dreaming. We can't just laze around, though. We have to stop the red weed too, said Lando. It's most important that we get people to listen, in case it affects anyone else.
That too,
said Hermione.
In between long naps.
You know it's the strangest thing, but I can't help but feel a little sad, said Robin. Even though Orpheus wasn't very nice. Somehow leaving it feels like leaving another part of my childhood behind somehow, and I feel as if I haven't got all that many parts to go.
Don't feel bad,
said Elfrida.
Mourning is a natural part of life, but only a part of it. That's why it's called mourning, because the afternoon and evening parts of your life are still to come. It's just nature's way of making us long before we move on to the next thing in life. And even at the very end of it all, there's still the afterlife to look forward to.
She frowned.
Oh, look at me. I'm starting to get my Mrasianart faith back. I thought I'd lost it.
And you'll only be missing the people we want to leave behind, the places and things that held us back, said Lando. Your friends will all still be with you for the next chapter of your life.
Good point,
said Bettina.
This isn't the time to be sad or worried, but a time to enjoy. And relax at last, without having to look over our shoulders all the time.
Oh, and she yawned. It passed from one head to a second head, and to the third, and was so contagious that soon the entire shuttle was yawning.
It must be time to sleep by now,
squeaked Jake.
How I miss my nice, safe, cosy, warm bed.
It's all right, comforted Lando. Just squeeze next to me and imagine I'm your pillow fort.
Technically night time isn't for another 2 hours yet,
said Archelaus, yawning so widely his mouth fell out.
I guess it has been a very busy day.
Time to sleep, regardless of rotas,
said Bettina firmly.
Story,
said Jake sleepily.
that's one rota I don't want to end.
Does anyone have a story about waking up on a new planet?
asked Bettina.
Yes, said
Elfrida.
I do. It's titled The Star of Judgment of the Fate of the Dead, or the Mrasianart tale of Orpheus. It seemed apt given what we're leaving behind us.
Oh no.
Hermione rolled her eyes.
A Mrasianart story. I'm not going to be able to follow this one at all.
Good job for a captive audience, then,
grinned Elfrida.
As you may or may not know, Mars is the 4th planet away from our sun. Legend has it that life on Mars was created not through gradual evolution like other planets, but was founded by reincarnated souls from others in the solar system, for every star seems to have its own Mars variant in orbit around it. The principle is that once you have reincarnated as every single living soul in history, regardless of space or time, then you end up one last time on Mars as a Mrasianart.
Yeah,
said Hermione.
Figures. I was said you weren't a normal child.
Elfrida continued, without taking the bait.
One day, a Mrasianart named Nurgle decided that he might be a better Mrasianart if he'd gone back to being one of the other species for a second lifetime, and got that lifetime right, knowing all the answers he then knew. That way he thought he could be a better, wiser, more caring Mrasianart when he reincarnated a second time.
Maybe you just had enough of all that pouncing about on your world,
laughed Margalo. Elfrida frowned, but carried on.
He was a very gifted musician, and also wanted another lifetime on each planet to have a chance to learn every song in the universe, including those that hadn't been written when he'd been alive. However, the king of Mars, Nanterre, decided that wanting to belong to a different species, to in effect go round again, was an insult to the people of Mars that were perfect already, so he decided to teach Nurgle a lesson. Instead of ending up back on one of the planets again, Nurgle woke up in the underworld, the original Orpheus, as a giant slug with no arms and ability to play any instruments. The only other creatures in this world were snakes.
How does anyone open any doors without any arms?
asked Archelaus.
Or eat their food? Or take a bath?
Pardon?
said Elfrida.
If nobody has the arms in this world, how does anyone open any doors, nor the rest of it?
asked Mekkion again.
This is a world without any doors, and you don't need to eat, and there are lots of streams for bathing,
continued the storyteller.
Anyway, Nanterre thinks that Nurgle will only last a day or two at best, and will soon be back begging to be made a Mrasianart again in failure. But no. Instead, Nurgle falls in love with Eurydice, who happens to be a giant slug. They have no concept of music on Orpheus, but they do have lots of trees, so slowly, month after month, Nurgle crept over a fallen branch of the tree until the acid within him had dissolved it into the shape of a nose flute. He then learned how to play it and courted his new love by playing. Eurydice was enchanted by the magical sounds and fell in love with him. However, a bigger slug by the name of Urscigel was queen of Orpheus, and she fell in love with the music too, deciding to keep Nurgle for her very own by bumping the rival off.
Very romantic,
butted in Hermione sarcastically.
Been sending flowers.
So Nurgle and Eurydice ran away together, though I guess in reality it's more of a slow crawl. As Skirgle hears about this, having learnt all about Nurgle's story, calls out to Nanterre to help get revenge on him. He turns up on Orpheus as a giant snake, and he bites Eurydice so that she drops down dead and gets reincarnated on Mars as a Mrasianart. Nanterre thinks that Nurgle is bound to beg forgiveness now and be reincarnated too, while Urscigel thinks that he is bound to fall in love with her instead. Only they're both wrong, because Mrasianarts are stubborn when they get behind causes they believe in. Instead, Nurgle mourns for his lost love, using his nose flute to write beautiful song after beautiful song about everything he's in mourning for. In time, all the creatures of Orpheus are so saddened by his pain that they make a pact that none of them will die, in case they too end up going through mourning. In turn, this spreads to all other inhabited worlds in the universe, so that nobody dies, except the Mrasianarts. Nanterre watches his kingdom get smaller and smaller as everyone else's gets bigger, full of creatures who refuse to die and reincarnate as Mrasianarts. Finally, gradually, after generations, as the only Mrasianart left, it is Nanterre who makes a pact to change her ways, and it is Mrasianarts who end up being born the way that every other species does, while every species agrees to die. Which just goes to show the importance of properly mourning something, I let him go. Now that is my story, both humble and true. Cut it with scissors and stick it with glue.
Oh, great,
said Hermione.
So nobody's happy in the end. What a Mrasianart story that was.
I liked it, said Lando. I love how our different planetary stories are a little bit more about our culture and how it ties in with the planet we've just left behind.
You would,
muttered Hermione.
Yes, said
Bettina.
Let's hope we have more luck leaving our Orpheus behind than Nurgle Thingy ever did. I think we have time for one more story, if anyone else has one.
Thank you, said Elfrida.
I can tell you many fables that have been passed down to my people from across the mist of time. I remember...
My turn, said Margalo, clearly reverting to her old abrupt personality again after her outpouring earlier.
Now get ready for some real Maggrumph culture. But once was a Maggrumph, calling Keith, who went into waters too deep. Fell in up to his head, he ended up dead, so let's stop talking and get some sleep.
Well, said
Elfrida.
That was more succinct than mine, I guess. Good night, everyone. See you in the morning.